Yes. What's happening, everybody? It's your Uncle Weezy. It's Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock Central Time. You know what that means. It means it's time for Just a Tip. It's time to break down 14 fights that we got on this UFC 296 card that is coming up this Saturday, headlined by Leon Scott, your champion of the welterweight division, going up against Donald Trump's favorite fighter, Colby Chaos Covington. It is going to be a ding-dong of a main event. Cannot wait for that fight. Can't wait for this whole card. 14 fights, some really great ones, some really compelling prelim matchups here. We've got a couple of women's fights on this card. We've definitely got some real good bangers on the undercard and on the main card as well. Shavkat Rakhmonov is on this card. You got the flyweight championship between Pantoja and Royval here. You got, obviously, the main event. You've got El Kukui going up against Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, who's a fan favorite. So that'll be one that get people talking. It's a great card, you guys. Ian the future Garry's on this card. So we got a lot of work, though, to do. 14 fights to break down. Last week's event was a small winning week. I only had 2 small bets. As you guys know, I've been sick. Been dealing with the cold recently, so wasn't able to do a full card breakdown last week. We didn't do Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy last week, but we did Ask Weezy. We did a greasy 4-leg parlay. 3 of the 4 legs hit. The one that didn't was Jun Young Park versus Muniz. Fight doesn't go to decision. For some reason, that fight did not finish, and it destroyed our parlay at plus 554. But we're going to try to hit another one this week. Up 1.73 units last week. I won 1.98 units. I bet 1.5 of that on the under 1.5 rounds for the Costa versus Garcia fight. That finished under 1.5 rounds. That cashed for 1.98 units. Then I had a small quarter unit bet on Suma Derji to win by submission at plus 2,500. Took a shot, swung for the fences, missed by a mile, but that's all right. Small winning week last week. Hit the underdog play that I gave out on the Patreon. We had the under for significant strikes for Luana Santos. That hit, and we had the over for significant strikes for Hyung Sung Park. That hit also. So that cashed us a plus 3 unit play. But on to this week. We got 14 fights to break down. We've got an absolute ton of work to do. So a lot of real interesting stylistic matchups, like I said. And I've got an absolute shit ton of notes. I researched the shit out of this card so that on this, the last Just the Tip of 2023, I could put together a really good show for you guys, a really informative show with a lot of information that can help you make better gambling decisions in the long term and this week to help you do what you love doing, which is making money while watching the best sport in the world, the UFC, MMA, and we've got some real ding-dong Donnie Brooks of fights coming up this Saturday. So let's see what's going on with you guys in the chat here before we start breaking down these fights. We've got the Cuban Assassin in the room saying, it's me, the Cuban Assassin, the Cuban Machado Garry Assassin. What if Garry wins and brings in a Brazilian interpreter to address his people? Let's fucking go. Uncle Machado, Weezy. Dude, anything is possible. I'm definitely telling you, anything is possible when Ian Garry gets on that mic because he says some dumb shit on the mic. He says it in the interviews. He's always got something to say, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong way, including me a lot of the time. But hey, you know, if they're talking about you, it just makes you more popular. And what that kid is doing in the cage, you can't really discriminate what he's doing against the cage in the cage because he's fighting really, really well right now, and he has been on fire and looking spectacular, especially at distance striking range. So who knows what he's going to pull out, man? But nothing would surprise me at this point, Cuban Assassin. Always good to see you in here, brother. We got M.A. Liren in the room saying, "Oi, the last one of the year. Let's stack those Panettone cash tickets. Thank you for a great year of work, Unc. Happy holidays to you and your people." right back to you and your people as well, M.A. Laren. Thank you so much for showing up tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us here. And let's stack them high for UFC 296, the last UFC card of the year. My guy Bob Spikerman's in the room all the way from Holland saying, Weezy, what is up, my man? And he's saying, let's go, Vicente Luque. That is going to be a fun fight. Can't wait to talk about that one. Like I said, I've got a ton of notes for you guys today. And that is one of the fights that I enjoyed taping and writing up. We got Victor De Jesus, my guy from Grand Rapids, Michigan, saying, oi, yes, what's happening, Victor? Always good to see you in here. We got JP Taylor in the room saying, oi, Uncle Weezy for Sheezy. Yes, let's go, JP. Let's get it this week. We got my guy Lou Betcha in the room saying, let's finish the year strong, Uncle Weezy. Let's do it too, Uncle Lou. I know that you've had a phenomenal year this year, and it would be great to just stack a few more flapjacks on that big stack that you've already created for yourself this year. And I'd like to put a couple on the ones that I've created as well. So looking forward to finishing this year very strong, man. Lou, myself, DFS by the numbers, and Monk are going to be going live on Thursday afternoon on the MMA Engine YouTube channel for the last props to consider and maybe bet of the year. So that'll be a great year-end show on the MMA Engine to look forward to on Thursday. We've got my guy Kiwi Brew in the room saying, sure all, what is up, Eli? Good to see you hanging out in here. We got DGen for life in the room saying, oi, Dana just announced the winner of Pimblett T. Ferg fights the Indian dude that lost to Mike Breeden at UFC 300. That is going to be a war. Anshul Jubilee, the King of Lions, is he, or something like that? Either way, yeah, Jubilee getting the and that's if he's healthy, you know, that's the thing. And who knows? I mean, they might have to try to get Pimblett an even easier fight than that, because we're going to talk about how pathetic it is and how obvious it is that the UFC is trying to get Paddy Pimblett wins. We got Justin J in the room saying, oi, howdy, Uncle Weezy, and greetings, chat. What is up, Justin? We got my guy DFS up by the numbers in the room saying last card of the year. Big ups and big congratulations to my guy Brady and his wife for the birth of their first child in their marriage there. They just had the baby, I believe, on Thursday. It was the 7th, right? So it's the 12th. I think it was the 7th when they had him. So congratulations to Brady and his wife on the birth of their son. And ring a ding ding, you guys. Juicy Q with the $10 donation saying, thanks for all the hard work and great content this year. I truly appreciate you tipping me for the content. It means so much, and it really helps keep the lights on here in your Uncle Weezy's studio. Thank you so much for the donation, Juicy Q. God bless you, my man. We got EQ in the room saying, oi, what is up, EQ? Good to see you hanging out here. We got Real Fight Picks in the room saying, oi. We got C times S times O. Let's get it. And we've got JV in the room saying, oi, my bro Weezy, waiting on your prize picks. Thanks. I do have a little something for you at the end of the show on prize picks that I am looking at for this week. I think I got a play for you guys, and I'm going to do a little two-legger for one unit, you guys. So, yeah, I will have that out for you at the end of the show, JV. Appreciate you hanging out with us here. We got my guy Jeff Pelton in the room. Ring a ding-ding, you guys, with the $5 donation saying happy holidays, Weezy. Thanks for all the work you put in. Let's stack them up. Let's do it, you guys. Like I said, I've put in the work for this show. I'll show you guys real quick here, actually, when I share my screen with you guys, how much notes I have for this show, man. This card has been well researched. Let's put it that way. And we got Daz Files in the room saying, oi, let's go. Finish the year strong. Let's do it, Daz. I want to put a couple week winning streak here at the end of the year, and then get those 3 weeks off to work on some new products for next year that I'm very excited about. We got Antonio Esparza in the room saying, oi. We got Bob Spikerman's ring a ding ding with the donation saying, thanks for this year, Weezy. Let's go, everyone in the chat that can afford it. Please bless our main man, Weezy, for helping us stack flapjacks all year long. Truly appreciate the kind words and the donation, Bob. It really, really helps out a lot. And you've always supported the show, and I truly appreciate you for doing that, man. And I thank all of you guys for watching live. 32 of you in here. right now. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and please consider joining the Patreon where you get access to all the stats that you see every week here on Just the Tip and Ask Weezy and Stat Diggers on Pub Sports Radio. A really great way to have all the information for all the fights of every week at your fingertips so that you can make much better gambling decisions in the long run. So check out that Patreon down there, and thank you so much for the donation, Bob. We got Juicy Q in the room saying, hell yeah, appreciate you, Juicy Q. Thank you so much, man. We got Fight Talk Only in the room saying, oi, what's up, T.O. Weezy? Thank you for your work this year and the years prior. You're awesome, Unk. Happy holidays, and let's go out with a bang, baby. Let's absolutely get it this week. It's always best to finish off a long year on a winning note, and I'm definitely looking to do that this week. Truly appreciate you, Fight Talk Only, and all the help that you've given me this year, and let's look forward to an even better 2024, my man. We got Corey Mann in the room saying, oi, I'm on that Lipski dog money this week. We're going to talk about that fight, Corey. I think you might like what I have to say about it. We got Bob Spikerman's in the room saying, ha, 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 Panettone, let's go, baby. Let's go. We got Volkanovski's cardio is in the room saying, you feeling better, my man? I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there, but I'm still all stuffed up in my head and in my lungs. But, you got to fight through it at some point. I'm not letting the cold stop the content this week on the best card of one of the best cards of the year. Last week, it definitely was hitting a lot harder because I had just gotten it. But, man, it just won't go away. It won't die, this cold. And it's very rare that my immune system doesn't 10-8 something right off the bat. So, yeah, it's frustrating, but I'm getting a little bit better every day and continuing to bombard it with drugs and drink lots of fluids. So we'll see what goes on from here. We got Bob in the room saying, Luque is pretty much my favorite fighter of all time. So just imagine he shaves Ian Garry's ass and catches that plus 310. That would be, anytime you hit a plus 300 or better, that's a big bet to hit. But yeah, especially when you cash it on your favorite fighter and your favorite fighter shaves the ass of a fighter that you dislike greatly, makes that plus 300 even sweeter, my friend. A chef's kiss, it's just a beautiful way to win a bet. We got SD Crusader in the room. Uncle, the Uncle Weezy. What's happening, SD Crusader? Thanks for joining us, man. We got Engine Props to Consider. Don't miss it. Yes, sir. Coming up on Thursday, you guys, Thursday afternoon. We got Antonio Esparza in the room. Ring a ding ding, you guys, with the $5 donation saying, Unc, we appreciate the time you have given us throughout the year. I know I don't always little, but I just wanted to support you, bro. It truly means a lot. Any donation is a big donation to me because it means that you guys are showing me some love for all the work that I put into this show. Let me share my screen with you here. We've already got the stats up here, but let me just show you, what we're doing here. These are my notes on the fights. This is the Brown versus the Brown versus Salikhov fight. And then we got Buday versus Gaziev. And I mean, you go through here, and this is all the writing that I've done just for this show so that I can have a fully researched opinion on all 14 fights on this card. There are 32 pages of notes here. So you guys, when I do put a lot of work into this show. So it means a lot when you guys show up live and show me love. When you give donations to the show, when you hit that thumbs up, when you hit that subscribe, when you join the Patreon, all that stuff really, really fuels me to do even better work for you guys every single week and put in as much research so that we all together can make better decisions and make more money watching and betting on the sport that we love, which is MMA and the UFC. So I appreciate you guys, but we got so much work to do. So let's share the screen here and let's start breaking these fights down from the very first fight that we're going to see in the night until the main event. And we're going to start off with Randy Rude Boy Brown. He is a minus 260 favorite going up against Muslim, the king of Kung Fu, Salikhov at plus 220. Fight doesn't go to decision, just a little bit over 50% implied probability here at minus 125. So let's first start talking about the advantages that Randy Brown has in this spot. So Randy's always going to have really nice measurables advantages, especially in this fight. He's going to be 6 years younger. He's going to be 4 inches taller and have an 8-inch reach advantage over Muslim Salikhov. And not only is Randy 6 years younger than Muslim, but he's also the more experienced overall and in the UFC, the more experienced fighter. So Randy has 55 more minutes of cage time in 3 years less as a professional fighter. So Randy has been the far more active professional, and he's the more experienced professional. And he also has the UFC experience advantage with 7 more fights and over 65 more minutes of octagon time than Muslim Salikhov has. Now, Randy is the far more active striker. He attempts 14.15 distance strikes per minute compared to only 7 distance strike attempts per minute for Salikhov. You can see those numbers right here, 14.15, which is 3.09 more than the average for the division for Randy Brown, while Salikhov is only throwing 7 distance strike attempts, which is 4.06 less than the divisional average for distance strike attempts per minute at distance. So Randy does a decent job of using his length when he strikes, and he has a positive 1.15 distance striking differential over a 92-minute sample size of distance striking stats. So Randy's height, reach, and volume makes him an efficient minute winner at distance striking range, as Randy is 6 wins and 1 loss to the decision in his UFC career. And Randy is a fairly efficient grappler. He gets out-controlled 27% to 18.5% on the aggregate, winning only 40% of the control time positions his fights have been in. However, Randy has attempted only 23 takedowns, while Randy's opponents have attempted 47 against him. And Randy's takedown accuracy at 39% and his takedown defense at 74.5% are both above average for the division. Tall, long guys are difficult to take down because they can always find a base. Their long limbs provide unusual choke opportunities, and they're usually very aggressive with submission attempts when you get them down. So Randy's done a decent job of making it difficult to win minutes in the grappling exchanges against him. Now, the king of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikhov, is a dynamic, precise, and technical striker who's 13 wins and 1 loss to the KO in his career. He's low volume, but he's extremely accurate at 48.5% at distance and defensively responsible at 67.64% at distance. Muslim is 3-1 to the knockout in the UFC, and he's landed 3 knockdowns in 9 UFC fights. You can see his one-punch KO power in the Ricky Rainey and the Nordine Taleb fights, and Muslim's ability to throw fast, technical spinning shit always makes him a candidate to land highlight reel KOs. 80% of Muslim's octagon time is spent at distance striking range, where he does his best work winning minutes and moments with his positive 0.71 distance striking differential with a 1.08% distance knockdown percent. Excuse me, guys. I had to cough there a little bit. And Muslim's UFC wins are a little bit better than Randy Brown's. Muslim's ratio of 1.44 in his UFC wins is better than Brown's, which is 1.09. Both guys have beaten experienced dudes, but Muslim's wins are over guys with a better combined UFC record of 39 wins and 27 losses compared to 63 wins and 58 losses, which is the combined record of the guys that Randy Brown has beaten at the UFC level. So you see a 1.44 win-to-loss ratio in this record of the opponents compared to 1.09 here for the 63 and 58 Randy Brown's opponents. So this is an interesting matchup. Here, let me get some water first. Now, obviously, we love the measurables, the experience, the activity, and the well-rounded nature of Randy Brown's game. The fact that he's 6 years younger and has an 8-inch reach advantage, that's impossible to ignore. And we really saw Salikhov get broken by Dalby in his last fight. So the fact that Randy can put a pace on his opponents at distance and in the clinch is going to be important here. Muslim is flashy and precise at range, but how Muslim deals with the length of Brown is going to be interesting. I could see Muslim having success to the body because Brown's length and his spinning back kick to the body could be a perfect weapon to use in this matchup. But I have to favor Brown here. He's younger, he's taller, he's longer, he's more experienced overall and in the UFC. He does way more at distance, and I think his ability to push the pace at distance and in the clinch will wear down Muslim, allow him to win the minutes of this fight. As long as Brown doesn't oblige Muslim in a low-volume point fighting affair, I think he should be the busier, more aggressive fighter who wins the minutes of this fight on his way to a decision victory. So the pick for this curtain jerker is going to be Randy Rude Boy Brown to win this fight by decision. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got Thomas Kane in the room saying, what is Weezy's prediction for the fighters in his secret super fight they're working on? In this secret super fight they're working on. I don't know, dude. I don't know what that means. What is Weezy's prediction for the fighters in this secret super fight they're working on? Oh, so they're working on a super fight, and who do I think it's going to be between? Wow, I didn't know that they were going to so different divisions. Maybe it's Does Islam move up to 170? Maybe? Nah. It'll probably be like Hamzat against somebody. Like they'll move Hamzat back down to 170, or I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We got D Spearman in the room saying, Weezy, what's up, D? Good to see you hanging out here. We got Jose Valdez in the room saying he's Team Randy Brown. I'm picking him to win this one too, dude. Finish only on bet Salikhov, maybe. I don't know. Salikhov's getting old, dude. Has Randy Brown been knocked out? He's been knocked out twice and subbed twice. And Salikhov's got a 50% finish rate in the UFC. It's 45% finish rate for Brown. I mean, anybody. I mean, like Muslim, he can catch anybody. He's a very talented striker. So, I mean, it's of course it's possible, but I'm picking Brown to win the minutes of this fight. Let's see. We got and by the way, Jose Valdez likes that finish only bet on Salikhov. We got Volkanovski's cardio saying, can we trust Brown's chin? That JDM fight has me worried. Yeah, JDM is a little bit different, obviously, but yeah, we don't know. And don't forget, that was in Perth, dude. I mean, for an American to go all the way to Perth, Australia, Perth is like further than some planets, okay, compared from the United States, that is. So, like, I mean, that was a fight that he was not going to win that fight. Jack Della Maddalena in front of the home crowd on a big winning streak was going to win that fight. But, I think Jack landed there was the first shot that he landed that actually hurt Brown. So you never know, man. And Jose says for hedging, you can bet that Salikhov finish only prop. Yeah, and I do enjoy watching Randy Brown striking too. He's super long, and it's fun to watch those guys use their length, but also kind of explode in because they're so big, to explode in with those power shots down the middle. It looks so pretty when they do it. We got Kiwi Brew saying, where else do you get terminological descriptions like fast technical spinning shit? You get it right here on your Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel, baby. That's what we're doing. We're doing it for free too, baby. Like and subscribe, you hoes. Let's go. We got the Cuban Assassin in the room saying Izzy versus Pereira up a weight class. Yeah, that could be interesting. Izzy not cutting, going. Yeah, but Izzy said he's going to take some time off, so that could potentially be it. Who knows? We got DFS by the numbers is saying the under 2.5 at plus 105 seems pretty solid. These guys love to get finished. Yeah, and I mean, like, you look at that, and 2 of 3 Salikhov UFC losses and 4 of 5 for Brown. So yeah, it's 6 of 8 or 75% of their losses come inside the distance. So getting an under 2.5 at plus money is never bad when you got 2 guys who have one punch knock. Well, I mean, they do not one punch for Brown, but like a knee, an elbow. That's where he can really hurt you. And then, obviously Salikhov has got some really flashy stuff. So I like that read, Brady. It's not a bad look there. And we got my guy Swinger is in the room saying mad props to Uncle Weezy. He made the playoffs in all 3 of his high stakes fantasy football leagues. Let's go. And Swinger would know because he's my partner in one of those leagues. We shaved some ass. We won the division. We got the first round bye. Me and Swinger's team is nasty, and we're looking to bring home the gold this year. And I got 2 other teams in the playoffs, positioned well to make a run. We'll see what happens there. But let's get on to this next fight because, like I say, we got 13 more fights to break down, you guys. So let's go to Martin Buday at -138, going up against Shamil Gaziev at +118. Fight doesn't go to decision for this fight at -200. So this is a very interesting fight. I really enjoyed breaking this one down and watching the tape on it. Gaziev is an interesting prospect, but let's first start talking about the advantages that Martin Buday has here. Martin is almost 2 years younger than Shamil. Martin has the overall and the UFC experience advantages. He's got 3 more pro fights. He's got 75 more minutes in the pro cage and 5 more years as a pro fighter. Martin also has 4 more UFC fights and 45 more minutes of octagon time as Gaziev makes his UFC debut on Saturday. Martin seems to be the more well-rounded and experienced fighter. Martin has very good conditioning for a heavyweight, and he's 4 wins and 1 loss in his career to the decision, so he knows how to stay busy and win minutes. Martin has 7 wins and 0 losses to the KO in his career. He can definitely box, and he has a nasty clinch game where he weighs on his opponents while landing knees, elbows, and uppercuts. And Martin's first martial art is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where he has a brown belt, and he's 2 wins and 0 losses in his career to the submission, with the Kimura being his favorite technique. Martin's good everywhere, but spectacular nowhere. So the key to beating him is finding the area where you're better than him and keeping the fight where you are most comfortable and where you've got an advantage over Martin. And Martin's also got the strength of schedule advantages. He's fought the better level of competition over his pro career in comparison to Gaziev. Martin has 4 UFC fights to Shamil's 0. So even though the combined records of Buday's UFC opponents is 9 wins and 18 losses, he's still fighting UFC heavyweights, while Gaziev has been fighting undersized regional scene heavyweights. But Gaziev does have 1 good win on the regional scene against Karol who's a very good kickboxer, glory kickboxer. That was a great fight. Now, Shamil Gaziev is a nasty finisher. He's finished 10 of his 11 pro wins inside the distance. He's got 3 submissions and 7 knockouts. On the feet, Shamil has power in his hands. And on the mat, from top control, Shamil has nasty ground and pound and 3 wins by way of rear naked choke. All Shamil's stoppage wins come in the first round or in the first minute of round 2. He's a very front-loaded fighter who's extremely dangerous wherever the fight goes while he has energy. And Shamil has dangerous striking. You see it on full display in the Delidko fight where he floored him with a perfect right to the body, followed by a left hook, finishing with ground and pound immediately afterwards. He knocked out Darko Stosic with a beautiful lead uppercut that dropped him to the canvas and finished him with ground and pound. And we even saw Shamil land a knockdown on Dana White's Contender Series with the first straight right that he threw in that fight. Shamil definitely has power on the feet that needs to be respected. And when you add to the fact that you also need to be worried about the entries on his takedown attempts while you're standing across from him, so Shamil gives you a lot to think about when you're at distance striking range. And he can definitely wrestle. He's originally from Dagestan, so you know he has the background of a wrestler, and he's shown on his tape that he can get takedowns and dominate from top control with his ability to pass to dominant positions, land ground and pound, and then make you give up your back where you can get that rear naked choke. It still remains to be seen if he has the necessary conditioning to push a wrestling-heavy game plan at the UFC level for 15 minutes. And the tape we saw in the Karol fight in Aries did not look good as both guys were totally gassed after one hard round. This is going to be a fun fight. Buday is still undefeated in the UFC at 4 wins and 0 losses, but his level of competition fighting Fat Barnett, Lucas Bresky, Fat Collier, and Josh Parisian wasn't exactly a murderer's row to get that 4 wins and 0 loss record. Buday does have the youth, the size, the overall and UFC experience advantages, the superior conditioning for sure, and the minute winning skills. And he's fought the better brand of competition, but Gaziev is very dangerous on the feet, especially early. And we haven't seen Buday's takedown defense tested yet. And Gaziev is sure to mix in some wrestling here. I think we still have a lot to learn about Gaziev. He started trading MMA at the age of 15, but then took something like 10 years off and didn't return to the sport as an amateur until 2018, where he went 9-2, and then his pro record is only 3 years long. Pro career is only 3 years long, but he's yet to taste defeat as a professional, which makes him dangerous. I do like the advantages Buday has on paper here, and as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be the biggest heavyweight Gaziev has fought since the Kornilov fight, and Kornilov was the only guy to take Shamil past the 6-minute mark of any pro fight, and in that fight, we saw the likelihood that Gaziev can win minutes late in fights at this level is suspect at best. I have to lean with the conditioning, the experience, the strength of schedule, and clinch game that Buday brings to the table here and pick him to win by 3rd round knockout. And I do think a live entry on Martin Buday, if he can weather the early storm against Gaziev late in the 1st round, is the best way to play him here. But the pick is going to be Martin Buday, Bryce, to win this one by KO in the 3rd round. And I think Gaziev is very live to win this fight in the 1st round. I think Gaziev round 1 is the best way to play his. If you're on that Gaziev side and you think he gets the win here, pick him to win in round 1, because this is a great thing. I put this up here. This is at Moiz Audio, MoIZAUDIO, one of my favorite follows on YouTube. He put this video up here, which is as we mentioned already. So thanks to Moiz Audio for that awesome video showing how gassed Gaziev here. And he says, mush of the week, fight time 2 minutes, 38 seconds, exhaustion level 91%. So there you go, you guys. Very interesting fight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got Antonio saying, I'm actually pretty excited to watch this heavyweight fight. And I don't know why I am. I'm excited to watch it too. It's going to be a great fight, dude. This is going to be the first guy that's really going to push Martin Buday to fight. Everybody else was all right, just kind of like, going through the motions with him. I want to see somebody that's going to make Buday fight, because when they make Buday fight, I think he's going to get in that clinch and wear on him. I think he's going to get top control and land big shots and get submissions. So I think it's a great fight. We got JP Taylor saying Martin is a big heavyweight, and yes, he is exactly that, a very big heavyweight. We got Ryan Suck saying I have Colby shaving Leon's ass. It's a great fight. I can't wait to break that one down with you guys. And I don't know, maybe I agree with you, maybe I don't. We're gonna find out in a little bit, man. Volkanovski's cardio saying Buday via belly suffocation, and that could absolutely happen. Is Buday the fattest heavyweight in the UFC? No, man. It's definitely Fat Collier. Fat Parisian with the spinning fat kick I think is fatter than Buday, who Buday just murdered. Fat Barnett is extremely fat, you guys. Fat Barnett cuts to get down to like 260. Don't forget Justin Tafa, who's like 5'10", missed weight at 266. So he's definitely not the fattest heavyweight. We got Jeff Pelton saying so many heavyweight resumes littered with wins over the likes of Sherman, Parisian, Vandera, Roque Martinez. No, you're absolutely right, man. The low level of the heavyweight division in the UFC is hilariously bad. And those are the guys that Buday has been beating. So Buday was around minus 180 when I wrote up this fight and I taped it. Now that he's at minus 135, I think Buday is a much better bet. And at minus 135, I think if he can survive 2.5 to 3 minutes of this fight, you might be able to get him at plus money on the live line, and that might even be a better way to play him. But I'm feeling pretty good about Martin Buday winning this fight, you guys. We got the heavyweight division needs help. Get some help, UFC heavyweight division. Get some help. We got the pink-eyed goat is in the room. We got EQ saying he's exhausted, LOL. We got, holy shit, it looks like he's about to die. Yeah, it was funny, right? I mean, like, that guy won that fight in less than 3 minutes and then was interviewed. Like, this is a 5 to 6 minutes after you've won the fight. He still hasn't slowed his breathing or calmed down. I mean, like, this guy's got no recoverability. 1 minute between rounds after 5 minutes of fighting is not going to be enough for Shamil Gaziev to go back out there and do good work in the second round. So I'm very worried about this dude's conditioning. We got EQ saying gas in there, man. I totally, dude. We've got JP Taylor saying some people just always look tired. No, it is true, though. Some people do. Remdog saying, I'm hoping that line keeps getting steamed, and then I might play Buday. Yeah, I don't know how much more it's going to get steamed, but it's definitely getting steamed. I mean, there's a lot of money coming in on Gaziev, and I get it, man. When you watch the tape on him, he's hitting dudes hard. He's getting takedown. If you've got power and wrestling in the heavyweight division, it's going to carry you a long way, but you kind of need some conditioning to go along with it, and that's something that Shamil's not bringing yet. I'm guessing money will be moving towards Gaziev. Yeah, he's done the more eye-catching shit, so I could definitely see us potentially even getting a better price on Buday later on in the week. We got Vic saying, hey, Unc, I'm busy at work and can't participate much on the chat, but I'm here listening. I know you are, Vic. You're always here supporting the show, brother, and I always appreciate you, man. We got I Am the True Walrus saying, what's the correct range for fight doesn't go to decision here? Minus 200 to minus 260. I would say yes. I think fight doesn't go to decision is a great bet this week. I think under 2.5 rounds is a great bet this week. I think it's a parlay piece. And I think at minus 200, where it's available right now on Bet Online Sportsbook, which is what you always see on the line scrolling on the bottom here on Just the Tip, is always Bet Online Sportsbook. So minus 200, fight doesn't go to decision, I think is a great bet this week, and I think it's a great parlay piece. All right, but let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Andre Touchy Fili at minus 170 going up against Lucas Almeida, the underdog at plus 145. Fight doesn't go to decision here, sitting at minus 180 for this fight. So let's first start talking about Touchy Fili here, who's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage over Lucas. And he's got the overall and UFC experience advantages big time here. 17 more pro fights for Fili, 220 more minutes in the pro cage, and 4.5 more years as a pro. Andre also has the UFC experience advantage with 18 more fights at the UFC level and 205 more minutes of octagon time. Now, Andre Fili is a well-rounded, well-tested UFC fighter with 20 UFC fights and over 220 minutes of octagon time. He's good wherever the fight goes. He's long, dangerous, and diverse at distance striking range. He stays busy and uses his length well. He mixes in the wrestling when he has the advantage there, getting 2.22 takedowns per 15 minutes on 4.65 attempts, getting his takedowns at 48% clip, which is really good, and defending them at 69%, both well above average rates for the division. And Andre only has finished 3 of his 10 UFC wins, but he's 7-5 to the decision against a very solid level of competition. Andre is spectacular nowhere, but there really aren't any massive holes in his game to exploit either. He's got size, he's got length, he's got power, he's got good conditioning, he's got the ability to win minutes wherever the fight goes, and he's faced a solid level of UFC competition with a combined record of 133 wins and 97 losses. So Andre is good everywhere. He's a good fighter, you guys. And obviously, Fili has faced a much better level of competition over these guys' respective careers, and it really isn't even close. Now, Lucas Almeida is 1 year younger than Andre Fili, and Lucas is a finisher. He's finished all 14 of his pro wins inside the distance. He's got 5 submissions and 9 knockouts. He doesn't go in there to win minutes and outpoint you. He goes in there looking to take your head off with everything he throws, and he looks to rip a limb off or your head off with every submission or choke attempt. Lucas is a moment winner, and he's comfortable fighting that way. His conditioning is solid too. Of course, he slows down throwing 100% power into everything he throws, but he manages his output well. There's no quit in him, and he carries his power late into fights. And Lucas is so dangerous at distance striking range. He has a good chin. So if you do engage in a firefight with him, it's a really bad idea. Lucas has 2 knockdowns in 2 UFC fights, landing a knockdown on 3.64% of the distance strikes that he lands. In addition, Lucas stays busy, attempting almost 17 distance strikes per minute, landing 7.5 of them for a very impressive 44.35% distance striking accuracy, with a sparkling positive 3.82 distance striking differential that you see right there. Fili is a damn good striker, but he might want to wrestle in this matchup because Lucas is dangerous and durable at distance striking range. So I think this fight will come down to the moment-winning ability of Almeida versus the experience and minute-winning ability Fili has. Andre has that 3-inch reach advantage, the overall and the UFC experience advantage, and he's demonstrated the ability to win minutes, both at striking range and in the grappling exchanges, while fighting the more experienced and better brand of competition in comparison to Almeida. Now, Almeida's a wild card, though, and he's a very difficult opponent because he's got a great chin. He definitely has that dog in him, and he goes out there looking to cause damage and finish fights. He'll gladly take 1 or 2 trying to land his best shot, and he's willing to go chin for chin and bomb for bomb until one man falls. And if this fight plays out in a pocket boxing brawl, I do favor the power and the durability of Lucas Almeida. I think Andre should wrestle here early and often. His best chance to win this fight is to use his complete MMA skill set, use his striking to set up the entries on his takedowns, get this fight to the ground, find his way to Lucas Almeida's back, which is something that Andre Fili does very well, where he can eat up minutes, wear on Lucas, and neutralize his offensive output. If he's unable to get this fight to the ground, I think it's just a matter of time until Almeida exploits Fili's 53% striking defense, lands a big bomb, and potentially finishes this fight. I'll be on the lookout for a Lucas Almeida finish-only prop at plus money. That didn't happen. But I do think Fili has a path to out-wrestle and grapple Almeida on his way to a decision victory. So I'm going to pick him to do exactly that. Andre Fili by decision is my pick for this fight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We've got JP Taylor saying Almeida by finish. Fili's chin is on thin ice. Yeah, I mean, I agree, dude. And I mean, Joe Anderson Brito didn't do him any favors by landing that big shot against him. Yeah, and Fili's been around for a very long time. He's been in there with some of the toughest guys in the division. He's got 20 UFC fights. So, Lucas Almeida, if you are starting to break on your chin a little bit, if there are starting to be some durability concerns, Lucas Almeida is going to be a very live opponent against that archetype of fighter. And while I'm picking Fili here, I wouldn't be surprised if Lucas Almeida landed a big shot that knocked out Fili because Almeida is very, very dangerous. As far as saying no way in hell Fili should be minus 192, his chin sucks. And like we said, Lucas can exploit a bad chin. We got Remdog saying Fili doesn't strike me as the type to fight smart. I like Almeida here. It's plus money. We love those plus money spots, don't we? And we got Billy Nicholson saying, oi, we stacking cash like flapjack. We pray for Tony. Yes, let's pray for Tony. Let's pray that he gets out of this fight with very little brain damage because he's taken enough over his last few losses. All right, you guys, let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Tagir Ulanbekov at minus 170 going up against Cody Durden at plus 145. Fight doesn't go to decision here, plus money at plus 170 for this fight. So definitely the bookies are expecting this one to see the scorecards more times than not. Let's get this up here. Hang on a second. Let me get some water and cough, and we'll be up ready for this next fight. It's weeks where my voice is compromised, and we have 14 fights that are the toughest weeks to do this show. But let's keep going here. Ulanbekov, Durden. Let's first start talking about Tagir. Tagir's 4 months younger than Cody, so these guys are about the same age, and he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot. Tagir has about 25 more minutes of pro cage time and 2.5 more years as a pro fighter compared to Cody Durden. And Tagir's a solid boxer. He uses his length well by staying behind a crisp, long jab and teep kicks up the middle. He pumps that jab out there a lot to maintain distance, but as a result of that, he's heavy on his lead leg and he's susceptible to calf kicks. Tagir stays busy at range. He attempts 14.46 distance strikes per minute spent at distance. That's 3.65 more than the divisional average. He's 39% accurate. He's got 59.5% defense at range with a negative 0.05 distance striking differential. So his distance striking metrics aren't eye-popping, but he does do a pretty good job of winning minutes and making it difficult for his opponents to close the distance on him. He uses his length well by staying behind that jab and using those teep kicks, which is exactly what you want to see from a fighter with Tagir's frame at this division. And Tagir is definitely known for using his grappling game to win minutes and moments. He's a student of the legendary teacher Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, and his UFC grappling metrics show that ability to win minutes with his wrestling. Tagir averages 3.81 takedowns per 15 minutes on 8.9 attempts. He lands those takedowns at a 43% clip. He outcontrols his opponents 47.33% to 7.38%, winning over 86% of the control time positions in his fights. Tagir has lousy takedown defense at 61%. However, his get-up game is elite. He uses his length to get butterfly sweeps, or he threatens his guillotine, and he always finds ways to get back up a reverse position when he gets taken down. Tagir is 7 wins and 0 losses to the submission in his pro career, while Cody Durden is 5 wins and 3 losses to the sub. So I'm thinking Tagir might be very live to snatch up a submission in the scrambles of this fight. 75% of Durden's 4 pro losses come by way of submission, and Tagir has a nasty guillotine and rear naked choke. So I'm going to keep an eye out for the best Tagir Ulanbekov submission prop this week. If I can get something in the neighborhood of plus 400, I might throw a quarter unit on that. And Tagir has fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition thus far, and in particular, his UFC wins rate higher than Cody Durden's do. Now, Cody Durden's advantage is he's got 5 more pro fights than Tagir does, and he has the UFC experience advantage with 4 more fights and 33 more minutes of octagon time. Cody's been the much busier fighter, fighting almost 3 times per year as a professional, while for Tagir, it's about 1.5. And while I think Tagir is the better minute winner at distance striking range, it's Cody who is more likely the better moment winner. Cody has 6 wins and 0 losses to the knockout in his pro career. He definitely has a solid shin, and he, without question, has that dog in him. Cody lands distance strikes at an impressive 46% clip, but he's far too hittable at the moment with a 53.5% distance striking defense. I think this fight will be close on the feet if Cody can counter Tagir's jab and land calf kicks when Tagir is heavy on that lead leg. And Cody is a relentless wrestler. He's a 2-time state champion high school wrestler from the state of Georgia. He attempts 10.82 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he gets 5.41 of them. That's a 50% takedown accuracy paired with 80% takedown defense. Cody outcontrols his opponents 53.6% to 6.12%, winning just under 90% of the control time positions his fights are in, which is very impressive because almost 60% of Cody's UFC octagon time is spent in control time positions. So Cody's ability to push a wrestling heavy pace, get takedowns, and wear on his opponents makes him a very difficult stylistic matchup, especially for opponents who would prefer to strike. So this fight should be a grappler's delight. Both guys spend more than half of their UFC cage time in control time positions. Both guys attempt well over 8 takedowns per 15 minutes, and both guys do their best work when they win minutes with their wrestling and their top control and ground and pound. I think Cody will be able to take Tagir down whenever he wants to, but whether he'll be able to hold him down, that's a completely different story. We saw Tim Elliott take Tagir down 3 times, but only get 52 seconds of control time. We saw Bruno Silva take him down 4 times on 8 attempts, but only get 2 minutes and 21 seconds of control time. And Tagir has a really nasty high elbow guillotine, and his sweeps and get-ups are very good. So I don't know if Cody's going to be able to win minutes from top control in this matchup. And on the feet, I do favor Tagir's minute-winning ability due to the length, the jab, and the kicks that he possesses. I think Tagir has more ways to win this fight. And I think he has most of the finishing equity here as well, especially via submission. So I'm going to pick Tagir Ulanbekov to win the minutes of this fight on the feet and on the mat on his way to a decision victory here. So I am going with Tagir Ulanbekov to win this fight by decision over Cody Durden. This is a very, very fun and high-level flyweight matchup, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Was the pick Fili? Yes, it's Fili by decision is the pick, Eli. That's what we're going with there, man. We got Antonio Esparza saying Fili by decision, Kiwi. Yes, sir. Durden's boxing is underrated, says Real Fight Picks. And yeah, I mean, he's 6 and like we said, he's got a lot of knockout wins. He's got good calf kicks, and he's got kind of an unusual style. And sometimes that unusual style is difficult to prepare for. So yeah, Cody is, I don't think he's out of his depth here on the feet. But for Tagir being as tall and as long as he is, I love the style with which he fights. I think it fits his natural gifts perfectly. And it's going to be up to Cody to close that distance against that taller, longer Tagir Ulanbekov, who does such a good job of staying behind the jab and using those teep kicks to maintain distance. Do we know why Ulanbekov hasn't fought in over a year? I'm pretty sure, like, there was a card that was happening in, like, Tennessee, I think in Memphis or in Nashville, where Nurmagomedov's both pulled out. I think Abu and Umar both pulled out, and I think Ulanbekov pulled out of a fight as well. Let me we can bring up another Tapology page here. Go to UFC 296 and look and see if Ulanbekov has had any fights canceled. The Jake Hadley fight 4 months ago, Ulanbekov withdrew, and that was 9 months after he beat Manus. So he might have had an injury after the Manus fight that took some time to heal, and then he had to pull out of the Hadley fight. So, and guess who stepped in for the Hadley fight? It was his opponent in this fight, Cody Durden. So very interesting there. And Tagir does have a nasty guillotine, and he's got those neuro-ass arms, Brady. Like you or I, we got some meat on our bones here, but like Tagir's got that skinny-ass fucking arm. So when he gets that underneath your neck, he can find that way right into that carotid artery. It shuts down the blood flow to the brain so fast. It's tap or nap there. And I could see him finding a submission here for sure. And if I could find the right price, like 400 or better, I'm going to be playing that. All right. Let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be a Donnybrook for sure. Alonzo Menifield at plus 227 going up against Dustin Jacoby, the Hanyak. Dustin's a big favorite here at minus 267 on the money line, and the fight doesn't go to decision. 60% implied to finish inside the distance at minus 150 here. So let's first start talking about Alonzo Menifield's advantages in this spot. Okay, Alonzo has been the more explosive finisher as a professional. He's got a 92% career finish rate in 14 pro wins. He's got 3 submissions and 10 knockouts. Zoe finished 6 of his 7 UFC wins for an 86% finish rate, while Dustin finishes at a 57% rate in the UFC. Alonzo is an explosive athlete, and because of that, he has big power. He's built like a refrigerator. He hits very hard. Dude's got an arena football background. He was a linebacker. It's not surprising when you look at him. Zoe's got 4 knockdowns in 11 UFC fights, and he's 4 wins and 1 loss to the knockout in his UFC career. He's doing well at distance striking range with a positive 1.36 distance striking differential with way above average 53.33% accuracy and 63.4% defense. Menifield is not as technical as Jacoby is at distance striking range, but he definitely has that power that keeps his opponents honest, and his numbers at range are way above average. So I don't think he'll really be out of his depth here at distance striking range, but Dustin's going to be more technical for sure. And Alonzo's grappling efficiency is excellent in the UFC. Alonzo wins almost 68% of the control time positions in his fights, despite only attempting 21.5% of the takedowns and getting 31% of them. His size and strength allows him to stop takedown attempts at a 77.5% clip, and his ability to control his opponents in the clinch is excellent. A much higher percentage of Menifield's fights take place in control time positions compared to Jacoby. 48.1% for Menifield. The aggregate of his fights take place in control time positions, while it's only 16.25% for the kickboxer in Jacoby. So I think it's entirely possible we could see Alonzo close the distance here, get into the clinch, wear on Jacoby, and not allow him to strike at distance. And if that happens, I think Alonzo is way better equipped to win minutes in that kind of a matchup. Now, Dustin Jacoby's advantages. Dustin is 6 months younger and 3 inches taller than Alonzo. Dustin has the overall experience advantage with 9 more pro fights and over 100 more minutes in the pro cage and 5 more years as a pro fighter. Dustin also has the UFC octagon time advantage with 10 more minutes than Alonzo. And Dustin's the younger and more experienced fighter in this matchup. And that's a great combination of attributes to have. Dustin is a former glory kickboxer, and he does his best work at distance striking range. He's a natural athlete who was offered Division I scholarships in both football and basketball, and he uses that size and athleticism well when he's at striking range. 83.75% of Jacoby's UFC octagon time is spent at distance striking range, and while he's there, he's got a positive 2.07 distance striking differential. He's got 46% accuracy and 60.5% defense, all above average metrics for the division. Dustin is 12 wins and 1 loss to the KO in his pro career, and he's 4-0 to the KO in the UFC. He's landing a knockdown on 0.66% of the distance strikes that he lands, and he has 4 knockdowns in 10 UFC fights. So not only can Dustin win minutes at range with that positive 2.07 distance striking differential, but he can also win moments with his power. And like Alonzo, Dustin also has surprisingly good grappling efficiency numbers for a kickboxer. Dustin only gets 18.75% of the takedowns in his fights, and he only attempts 33.3% of the takedowns, but he wins 57% of the control time positions his fights are in. So he might be easy to take down, but he's way harder to hold down. And that has a way of tiring out his opponents and allowing him to keep fights standing late and outwork his opponents at distance striking range. So what a fun light heavyweight matchup this is. You have the technical kickboxing of Jacoby against the explosive power of Alonzo Menifield. Both guys have considerable power, but I definitely rate Menifield as the better moment winner, while Dustin's minute winning ability at distance is unquestioned. It was a few years ago now, but I didn't like how Alonzo looked in the St. Preux fight. He had a really hard time closing the distance, and when he got careless doing so, Oven slept him with a straight left. Alonzo is going to have to find ways to close the distance against the taller and longer Jacoby, who uses his jab and kicks to maintain distance very well. So that is not going to be an easy task. That being said, while both guys have power, I do think Menifield will be the guy who is the more likely moment winner wherever the fight goes, especially on the ground, where we've seen Menifield show a sneaky good submission game with his Von Flue and guillotine chokes. I think Dustin is going to be able to maintain distance here, stay out of the clinch, pick apart Alonzo from range, but we all know it. All it takes is one big shot from Alonzo Menifield to change the trajectory of a fight. And all we have to do is go back 2 fights for Dustin Jacoby to see an example of a fight where Dustin won the minutes of the fight, but got clipped big time at the end of the first and second rounds and wound up losing a 29-28 decision after clearly winning the third round against the gassed Azamat Murzakanov. And in the fight before that, he won the minutes of the fight in all 3 rounds, but actually lost it on the judges' scorecards and it was a horrible decision, but the judges said that Khalil did more damage. But I mean, Jacoby was never hurt in that fight. So, I mean, it was an absolute trash decision, but we've seen Jacoby win the minutes of a fight, but still wind up losing on the scorecards. So, that's an important thing to remember, that being a minute winner isn't that great at heavyweight and light heavyweight, where people find moments all the time. So Alonzo is most certainly live, in my opinion, at plus 230 due to his ability to land big shots, win minutes with his size and strength in the clinch and from top control, and potentially wrap up a submission. My pick is going to be Dustin Jacoby, and I think he might win this fight by second round knockout. I think he's probably going to find a finish here. And I also think the under 1.5 rounds at plus 160 is very live due to Menifield's finishing potential, added to the fact that all 4 of Dustin Jacoby's finish wins in the UFC came in the first round. This fight's going to be a bit of a ding-dong, and I think somebody is going to get served, and that somebody, in my opinion, is going to be Alonzo Menifield, and I think he's going to get knocked out in the second round by Dustin the Hanyak Jacoby. Very good fight. Really looking forward to that one. That is a really fun fight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. I can't believe Cody got out of that armbar against Jake the Pimp Hadley. He didn't really get out of it. I think he got his arm badly damaged in that armbar. He just refused to tap to it and then eventually found his way out of it after. Sometimes it's easier to get out of it after the arm has already been bent more than it's supposed to be bent, because now it makes your arm bendier and you can actually get it out of there. So yeah, that's he didn't really get out of it, and he's been on the sidelines since that fight. It was just cleared to fight as a result of that arm injury that he sustained in the Hadley fight, I think less than 2 weeks ago. So Cody definitely has that dog in him, and he's chomping at the bit to get back in there. Uncle Weezy, let's cash that greasy 4-legger this week, baby. I want to go out on a win. I've been cashing 3 out of 4 legs most weeks. 2 weeks ago was only 2 out of 4 legs, unfortunately, but yeah, we've been close so many times looking to hit it. I can hear you're still sick. Holy smokes. Hope you feel better soon, brother. Yeah, man. This thing is not letting go. It's very, very frustrating. We got bad boy Viv15 saying that, yeah, I know that 4-legger keeps slipping out of our hands. Purple crying. Yep. Let's bag and tag it this weekend. Let's get it, man. It's been too close too many times. My only bet for the card so far, 3 units on Jacoby at -200. There is levels to this, and he is the much more talented kickboxer for sure. Okay. All right, we're back. Get some water. Okay, let's move on to the next fight, you guys. Sorry about being sick. We got Casey O'Neill here at -185 going up against Ariane Lipski at +160. Fight doesn't go to decision. About 40% implied here at +150. So let's get these stats up here and first start talking about King Casey O'Neill here. Now, Casey is almost 4 years younger. She's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage over Ariane Lipski. And Casey has been a finisher in the UFC. She finished 3 of her 4 UFC wins, 1 by submission, 2 by knockout. And Casey isn't the most skilled striker in the UFC, but man, does she stay busy and throw a ton of volume. She lands a whopping 11.92 distance strikes per minute spent at distance and attempts a mind-boggling 22.73 per minute. She's accurate too at 52.5%, and her defense at 62% is slightly above average for the division. Casey doesn't do her best work at distance striking range, but she puts on such a pace while she's there. She makes it way easier to set up on the entries on her takedowns by walking forward, pressuring, and throwing all that volume that she does. And Casey won a ton of minutes with her wrestling and grappling in her first 3 UFC fights versus Shanna Dobson, Lara Procopio, and the Bad Shevchenko. She gets 1.96 takedowns per 15 minutes on 4.64 attempts. She has above average 42% takedown accuracy and 71.43% defense. She's outcontrolled her opponents 30.66% to 11%, winning almost 74% of the control time positions in her fights. Casey is heavy on top. She stays busy landing ground and pound while trying to advance her position. Lipski has had problems being on bottom in the past, so Casey would be wise to wrestle early and often so she doesn't have to worry about the power on the feet that Lipski brings. If Ariane lets Casey get to a dominant position on the ground, she's going to be in trouble. Now, Ariane Lipski has the overall and the UFC experience advantages here in comparison to O'Neill. She's got 14 more fights, 75 more minutes of pro cage time, and over 5 more years as a pro fighter. Ariane also has the UFC experience advantage with 5 more fights and 50 more minutes of octagon time. Ariane is the cleaner, more technical, and powerful striker at distance. She's going to have to find ways to deal with the relentless pressure and volume that O'Neill brings, but that pressure is also going to leave the door open for Lipski to find a big counter shot that potentially drops or knocks out O'Neill. Lipski has 3 UFC knockdowns in 10 UFC fights, getting a knockdown on 0.86% of the distance strikes that she lands. I think Lipski is the way more likely moment winner while this fight is at distance striking range. And Ariane has really cleaned up her takedown defense. In her last 2 fights versus J.J. Aldrich and Melissa Gatto, Ariane has shown a sparkling 100% takedown defense on 19 attempts against, allowing her to keep fights at kickboxing range where she's the most comfortable. If O'Neill isn't able to get takedowns and rack up some control time, she's not going to look minus 195 here. And Ariane has been stopping takedowns at an impressive rate since she switched camps to Amanda Nunes's gym. And Ariane has fought and beaten the better brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratio. So this is an interesting fight. Casey came back after tearing her ACL and fought Jennifer Maia to a close decision loss. We didn't see her wrestle much at all, and she was basically happy to strike at range with Jennifer Maia. It's possible she wasn't ready to wrestle yet, coming back so soon after major knee surgery, but I think she's going to have to wrestle in order to convincingly win minutes here. Lipski is too clean and too fast on the feet for O'Neal. And seeing Lipski stuff the last 19 takedown attempts she's seen in her last 2 fights has me quite convinced that there's some value on the Lipski money line at plus 170. I think on the feet, O'Neal has excellent pressure and volume, and that will look good to the judges. But that pressure and volume leaves her open to be countered by the faster, more powerful Lipski. So I think Ariane lands the bigger shots in this fight. If Ariane does stuff to takedowns, and I think she does, then I think she's going to win this fight by decision. So that is the pick, you guys. I am going with Ariane Lipski, the queen of violence, to win this fight by decision. And even though she is the queen of violence, it's important to note that only one of her 5 UFC wins came inside the distance, and it was in very awkward knee bar submission win against Luana Carolina. So that is the O'Neal Lipski fight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Since when are women called kings? Since never, Yog, but this is Casey O'Neal. She gets into her underwear and she fights other grown women for a living, for a vocation. So if she wants to call herself King Casey O'Neal, I don't think there's much that any of us can do to stop her. We got JP Taylor in the room saying, I want to bet Lipski here. Haven't gotten there, but I do think it's a good spot. You guys, I agree it's a good spot. I only watched 3 Casey O'Neal fights and 1 Lipski fight. So after I put the timestamps on this video, after I'm done tonight, I'm going to go back and finish taping this fight. And if I like what I see, I'm going to be putting a 1-unit bet on Ariane Lipski at plus 170 on BetOnline Sportsbook. EQ saying Casey was in Shannon Ross's corner during his fight. The loss could be contagious for Casey. I'm just glad that she's already here in the United States, getting acclimated to the time, because she trains a long way away and she lives in Australia. So yeah, you don't really want to be making that trip too soon before the fight. Casey is easily the most overrated fighter in the UFC. Got outboxed by Menifield and lost to old lady Maya. Yeah, I mean, even Menifield won a round of that fight, and that wound up actually being a split decision, even though I thought Casey O'Neal kind of clearly won 2 out of the 3 rounds of that fight. Either way, yeah, man, I mean, like the wins, Roxanne Menifield, the bad Shevchenko, Lara Procopio, and Shanna Dobson, it's not awe-inspiring, while Lipski's last 2 wins over a UFC veteran with a great record in JJ Aldrich and a very aggressive and dangerous submission grappler in Melissa Gatto, those are good wins. JP Taylor saying, Lipski on the upswing with the new camp and modest win streak. O'Neal coming off some injuries and a loss. Yeah, I mean, and O'Neal is still a big favorite here. So I think Lipski could be one of those sides where it's like, all right, it's plus 160, That means we just got to win 4 out of 10 times on the long run on these type of picks to come out a little bit ahead. And I think it's reasonable that Ariane Lipski can win this fight 4 to 5 to even 6 out of 10 times, depending on what the game plan is and how the takedown defense holds up. We got my guy Mushroom MMA in the room saying, what's up, Unc? Just stop by to show my support, brother. I appreciate you. Smash the like. And we got DFS by the number saying queen of nonviolence. And yeah, that's the direction it's going for Ariane. Ariane still has power, but we haven't seen her finishing fights at this level, really, except for that meme submission against Luana Carolina. And we got, yes, the queen of pacifism, according to Mushroom MMA, but she's on a 2-fight winning streak here. So it'll be interesting to see if she can make that 3 against Casey O'Neal. So let's move on to the next fight. It is going to be Cody Garbrandt going up at minus 190, going up against Brian Boom Kelleher at plus 165. Fight doesn't go to decision for this fight, sitting at minus 150. So let's first start talking about Cody Garbrandt. He's going to be 5 years younger and 2 inches taller than Brian Kelleher. And Brian's on a 1 year and 5-month layoff here as a result of having neck surgery. So Cody on about a 9-month layoff in his own right, still the fresher fighter here. And Cody's the faster, more powerful striker. Cody has great movement on the feet. He's hard to find. He's got a 63.65% distance striking defense. And when he lands, he does land big. Cody has landed 10 knockdowns in 13 UFC fights, showing a 2.83% distance knockdown percent. And 5 of his 8 UFC wins do come by way of knockout. Cody's still only 32 years old, so it'll be interesting to see if he can regain his championship form and start dominating with his boxing again. But he's looked so slow and tentative lately. Cody's fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition overall, and his wins rate better than Bryan's in both win-loss ratio and experience level of opponent, which makes sense because Cody is the former bantamweight champion of the UFC. Now, Brian Kelleher is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage here, and he's the more experienced fighter by a long shot. He's got 20 more professional fights, 150 more minutes of pro cage time in 2 more years as a pro fighter. He's also been the way busier fighter, fighting 3 times per year as a pro, while Cody fights less than twice a year. Brian even has 2 more fights at the UFC level. Now, Kelleher, he's also a solid pocket boxer. His UFC distance striking metrics are below average when it comes to distance striking differential at negative 2.35. His accuracy at 36%, his defense at 57.5%. They're both slightly below average. But he's getting a knockdown on 0.92% of the distance strikes that he lands. And 4 of his 5, Garbrandt is unusually chinny as he's absorbed 7 knockdowns in the UFC, and 4 of 5 of Cody's UFC losses come by way of knockout. So Cody isn't the best minute winner at range anymore, and Brian is almost as live to land a big shot as Cody is due to how chinny Cody is these days. So Brian, 8 wins, 1 loss to the KO in his career. So I think Brian could win moments and maybe even some minutes at distance in this fight, as Cody's distance striking metrics, even though he's a former champion, he throws much less volume than his opponents do. He lands much less volume than his opponents do. And, even though he's landing a knockdown on 2.5% of the strikes that he lands, he's absorbing 1.35% of the strikes that he absorbs. So, when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And Cody relies on landing big shots to win, but when he loses, it's usually because he absorbs a big shot. And I think that Brian Kelleher is the much more likely guy to attempt to win minutes with his grappling in this matchup. Almost 44% of Brian's UFC octagon time is spent in control time positions, and Brian wins 61% of those positions, out-controlling his opponents 26.66% to 17%. Brian gets 1.79 takedowns per 15 minutes on 4.17 attempts. So Cody will have to worry about Brian mixing in the wrestling as well as protecting his chin at distance striking range. I think Brian actually has more ways to win this fight than Cody does. We haven't seen Brian in almost a year and a half, as he's coming off a serious neck injury that required surgery. So that really needs to be kept in mind here. For all we know, Brian could be compromised after that kind of a procedure. And Cody Garbrandt, frankly, looks washed. He barely beat Trevin Jones the last time out in what could only be described as a lackluster performance. I think there are too many questions about the health of the 37-year-old bantamweight in Kelleher to trust him to win this fight, but laying juice on the 2023 version of Cody Garbrandt is not something I have the balls to do either. I think this fight is close at distance striking range. I think Kelleher is probably more likely to win minutes with the grappling, but at the end of the day, I see this being a closely contested fight that largely depends on how healed up and ready Kelleher is after this surgery and how potentially washed, shop-worn, and chinny Cody is, even though he's only 32 years old. I don't have definitive answers to these questions, so I'm going to personally stay away from this fight. But I think the value has got to be on Kelleher's money line at plus 165. And I'm going to pick Brian Boom Kelleher to win this fight by a very close decision. So Brian Kelleher by decision is the pick, but with very low confidence. But I do think that Cody probably doesn't look dominant here. I'd be surprised if he did. And I think everybody else would be too if Cody flashed some of that old UFC champion material that he had some years back. So, but let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We've got Antonio saying Kelleher's last 2 fights were against Umar and Bautista. Cody is a downgrade fight for Brian. There's no question about that. Garbrandt by submission, says JB Taylor. He's looking to grapple now, and Kelleher has lost by submission 8 times. Cody gets his first career sub. It was plus 1,100 on Bet Online earlier. Thought it might be even more juiced. Yeah, and you could get better prices than that on probably like FanDuel or DraftKings or Bet Rivers on some of those books that have the juicier props. Yeah, if you're going to bet somebody to win by submission that's never won by submission in the UFC and is probably never even attempted a submission in the UFC, you should at least be getting, 15-1 maybe. And I think that would be a fair price for Cody Garbrandt by submission. Yeah, put a couple sawbucks on it. What it doesn't hurt, and like you say, Cody may not get submissions, but man, oh man, Brian Kelleher, 8 career submission losses out of 14 in his career, and 4 of his 7 UFC losses come by way of submission. So I'm picking up what you're putting down there, JP. Antonio saying, honestly, why is Cody even fighting anymore? He's washed. He'll never fight for the title again, and he has the worst chin of all time. Just retire, bro. He's got fights left on his contract, and he's still only 32 years old. But, yeah, it's hard to see him regaining that old form. I agree. We got Chaz Bono's manly beard in the house saying Kelleher versus Garbrandt is a battle of 2 soft-boiled eggs. Yeah, I'm staying away from this one, man. I am not betting this fight. I'm going to just sit back and enjoy this one. And then DFS by the numbers saying boom finish only, probably voids, but I like it. Yeah, I mean, because Cody doesn't attempt submissions, and that's how Kelleher loses. And even though Kelleher is a good finisher with a 75% career finish rate, and he's finished 5 of his 8 UFC wins, they're not against former champion guys, but yeah, I mean, I think if one guy is more likely to land the big shot here, I think it's probably Kelleher just because of how chinny Cody Garbrandt is. And ring a ding, you guys. My guy Mushroom MMA with the $10 donation saying, "Oi, yes, ring a ding. Thank you so much for the year-end donation, my man Mushroom. I appreciate you, brother. And I hope that we have an even better 2024 than what we had in 2023. I appreciate the donation, keeping the lights on here in your Uncle Weezy's studio. All right, let's move on to this next fight as we've got Irene Aldana going up against Karol Rosa. And look, on 14 fight weeks, when I'm sick, there are some things that sometimes are going to fall by the wayside. And in this week's episode of Just a Tip with me, your engaging and hardworking host, Uncle Weezy, I did not have the time to tape this fight or write it up. And yeah, that's my prerogative, right? If I'm only gonna write up 13 of the 14 fights, I'm certainly not going to skimp on the main event or any of the main card events or main card fights. This one just kind of, Karol Rosa is just not very inspiring to me. I don't think she's very good anywhere. And I think Aldana is the better striker, but I'm just not impressed by Irene Aldana's all-around MMA game. And Irene's 35 years old, she had her chance against Nunez, and she got that chance off of a really weird knockout, one of the worst beats of my life. I had the over 2.5 rounds, and with 9 seconds left to go to cover that bet, Irene Aldana lands an up kick from her back to Macy Chiason's liver right on the button, and Macy just drops like a sack of potatoes. Her liver got shut off, and there was nothing she could do. Fight over. My over 2.5 rounds have to shred up that ticket in such a bad beat way. But she got a title, opportunity off of that fight, and Amanda Nunes beat 7 shades of shit out of her for 5 straight rounds. So the win over Yana Kunitskaya, the come from behind lucky win over Macy Chiasson. I mean, you have to go back to the flash KO over Ketlin Vieira for the last impressive Irene Aldana moment. But I'm not laying juice on Irene Aldana, not in 2023 and probably not in 2024 as well. And Karol Rosa is probably live at plus 170, but I'm not going to tell anybody to bet it because I don't know that she can actually get Irene Aldana down. I think she can throw more volume at distance, but she's just too defensively irresponsible at distance striking range. So I think Aldana lands the bigger shots. I think she probably wins this fight, wins it by decision. That'll be my pick, but I am staying away from this fight. So yeah, you guys, real quick breakdown there, but I don't have a write-up for this fight, and we're just going to move on to some more compelling fights, in my opinion. See what you guys are saying. Oh, yeah, of course. And DFS, no, says Skip. Yeah, just skip it. Look, Brady and I have done 42 events this year. We had an 18-week straight stretch over the entire summer where we didn't get a week off. If we just want to, it's our prerogative to not break down this fight and not care. And this is the one out of 14 fights where I'm going to give you very bare bones, very basic analysis and move on to the next fight. And JP Taylor says, Bobby Brown, this shit, it is my prerogative to skip over it. Yes, sir. Thank you for not wasting your time and ours by not breaking this down. Yep, absolutely. You're very welcome. Rosa plus 170 for all the units. Why not, man? And then Rem Dog saying, but Weezy, this is the fight I crawled out of bed today to hear you break down. Dude, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry because this is, according to JP Taylor, and I agree, the bathroom break fight. Take a shit, grab a smoke or a drink or both, and that is what this fight is to me. But I do think Irene Aldana is the better striker, the more precise striker, and her takedown defense is good enough to keep this fight standing where I think she wins the minutes and the fight. Will I be betting it? No, sorry, Bob. Let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be a bit of a ding-dong, you guys. We have got Josh Emmett at plus 196 going up against Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell at minus 231. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus 125 for this fight. Let's get these stats up here on the screen for you guys, and we're going to first start talking about Josh Emmett. Josh is going to have the overall and UFC experience advantages in this matchup. He has 5 more fights, 125 more minutes of pro cage time, in addition to 3 more years as a pro fighter compared to Bryce. Josh also has the UFC experience advantage with 5 more fights and over 75 more minutes of octagon time. Josh is the more dangerous striker and without question, the way better moment winner at distance striking range. Josh has 11 UFC knockdowns in 13 fights. He's landing a knockdown on 1.81% of the distance strikes that he lands, and he's 6 wins and 1 loss in his pro career to the knockout. Josh's distance striking metrics are subpar. However, even though he has a 33.4% distance striking accuracy and he throws and lands less strikes than the divisional average, Josh always throws with power and purpose, and all it takes is one big shot to land, and he wins the fight. Josh is 6-1 in the UFC when he lands a knockdown. The only guy to trade power shots successfully with Josh was Jeremy Stevens, who was known for also for having one punch KO power. Josh isn't a minute winner at distance, but all it takes is one, and he prefers to keep fights standing, as over 88% of Josh's UFC octagon time is spent at distance striking range. It'll definitely be up to Bryce to initiate the grappling in this matchup if he wants to avoid Josh's power shots at distance. And Josh has the UFC strength to schedule advantage according to my metric. He's fought and beaten the better and more experienced brand of UFC competition. Bryce's last 4 fights have been against studs like Dan Ige, Ilia Topuria, Touchy Fili, and Edson Barbosa. But Emmett's last 9 fights, top 15 guys, and he's also fought Ige Topuria in that stretch with slightly better results against those guys, in my opinion, than what Bryce Mitchell has against those guys. Now, Bryce Mitchell's advantages, he's got nice measurables advantages here. He's 9.5 years younger. He's 4 inches taller, and he's the southpaw in this southpaw versus orthodox matchup. Bryce does an excellent job of using his striking to set up his grappling entries. His distance striking metrics aren't bad. He has a positive 0.13 distance striking differential with way above average 47.2% accuracy and 65.26% defense. Bryce only spends 30% of his UFC octagon time at distance striking range. So obviously he prefers to grapple, and he does a great job of fighting to his strengths and using his striking to set up what he does best, his grappling game. And Bryce spends 70% of his octagon time in control time positions. He gets 3.51 takedowns per 15 minutes on 8.49 attempts. So he's very active trying to get fights to the ground. Bryce outcontrols his opponents 51.7% to 18.2%, winning 74% of the control time positions his fights are in. And Bryce is very aggressive, trying to finish fights while on the ground, attempting 1.61 submissions per 15 minutes. This is a striker versus grappler matchup, and Bryce is going to wrestle and try to wear on Emmett and hold him down and frustrate him. And Bryce does an excellent job of doing exactly that. Now, this is about as striker versus grappler as it gets. Bryce absolutely does his best work when he gets takedowns, advances to dominant positions, wins minutes landing ground and pound and hoping to set up a fight-ending submission. And you know when a guy finishes a fight in the UFC via twister that he's got a cheeky submission game for the UFC level. We can count on Bryce to be persistent with his wrestling attack. He's averaging 8.5 takedown attempts for 15 minutes, and he's accrued over 51% control time in the UFC. Josh Emmett's fights stay standing over 88% of the time in a 180-minute UFC sample size, and that's no accident. Josh has big power in both hands, so you need to be very careful closing the distance on him. And Josh is a very gifted athlete who has great footwork, excellent conditioning, and he's constantly moving laterally. So setting up high percentage takedown attempts against him is very difficult. And Bryce is not a guy who has shown the best conditioning in the past. And we have to keep in mind that Bryce is taking this fight on less than 2 weeks' notice, stepping in for Giga Chikadze. And that's another factor to keep in mind for this fight. Emmett was training to fight Giga, a pure kickboxer, and now he's fighting a pure grappler who relies on getting fights to the ground to win minutes and moments. Josh Emmett has only seen 15 takedown attempts against in his 13 UFC fights, so it's hard to know how he's going to look in a fight where his opponent isn't going to fuck off and continue to push the wrestling, even when he's tired. And I don't really have confidence in Bryce's ability to be able to wrestle hard for 3 full rounds on short notice either. I bet the over 2.5 rounds at minus 115 on Sunday evening, but that line is blown out now, and I think it's too juiced at the moment to risk Mitchell getting a submission or Emmett landing a flash knockout like he's known to do. I hate the opponent change for Emmett. Combine that with the fact that Bryce is 9.5 years younger and 4 inches taller, and obviously has a very dangerous grappling game when he gets fights to the ground. And since Josh wasn't training for that, and we haven't really seen him defensively grapple much lately, if at all. I'm going to have to lean with Mitchell here, and I'm going to pick him to win this fight by decision. Emmett is certainly always live to land a big shot that changes the direction of a fight, and he carries his power late in fights, so it's really hard to be confident in the short notice Mitchell, who's prone to gassing, especially if Emmett can stop his takedown attempts or get back up when he is taken down. The Josh Emmett money line is very interesting right now at about plus 200. I think there's a lot of value there, and I think that this is a dog or pass spot due to the fact that Thug Nasty is taking this fight on short notice, and that we do see him slow down later on in fights. So, yeah, I think it's a very interesting fight. I think that it's an interesting striker versus grappler matchup. I think Mitchell will be able to get enough takedowns and control time to win 2 out of the 3 rounds of this fight and stick to Emmett when he is tired enough to frustrate him and not allow him to land that big shot. So I'll go with Thug Nasty to win by decision, but Josh Emmett's money line at plus 196 to plus 200, I'm telling you, it's very interesting there, and I might be taking that dog shot this week. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat about this fight. Let's see. Matthew Chalk saying, I can't remember Josh being held down. If he can't hold Josh down, I can't see Bryce outstriking him. Clear stay away. I agree with everything that you just said there. And there's not a lot of footage of Josh Emmett grappling. Topuria takes down Emmett 3 times in the 5th round of their fight after Emmett had absorbed something like 140 significant strikes up to that point. So I don't care that he took him down 3 times. Like in the 5th round. This is a 3-round fight, and I think it's a completely different story. So, and then before that, you just don't see Emmett getting out wrestled and grappled a lot. It just doesn't happen much in his fights. And I think that's because of how much he moves laterally at distance striking range. Mitchell walking out with a giant wooden cross on his back, like Chemo Leopoldo at UFC 4, screaming freedom, of course. I think that would be awesome. I'd love to see him pull a Chemo and come out there with that cross and the G. Yeah, dude, that would be really cool. Because him walking in with that Bible and screaming freedom last time was pretty epic. I've never really seen anything quite like that, man. It was crazy. Fender Jazz saying, funny Remdog got out of bed. I seriously nodded off during that breakdown. Not because of you, Weezy. Good to see you. Thanks, Fender Jazz. I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, man. It's that kind of a fight, right? Oh, we got Antonio saying, do you think Mitchell's fruit trees grew back? I hope so. Or I hope that he at least planted some new ones. But, I mean, those fruit trees didn't deserve to get run over and destroyed by a jilted ex-girlfriend. Those fruit trees didn't hurt anybody. They're trying to feed us human beings with their delicious fruit. So completely uncalled for. Bush League move there by Bryce Mitchell's psycho ex-girlfriend destroying his fruit trees. 2 thumbs down from your Uncle Weezy there. We got JP Taylor saying fight doesn't go to decision. Seems like the play here. I think both guys have a path. Mitchell via submission, Josh Emmett via knockout. But when you look at the prop template, it's really interesting to see that these guys in 3-round fights are just not finishing their opponents, and they're not getting finished either. As we can see, the fight doesn't go. That's a 44% line at plus 125, but only 3 of 9 Emmett fights have finished inside the distance, and only 2 of 8 Mitchell fights. So less than 30% of their fights. So at fight goes to decision at minus 155, you're paying about 61% on the line. About 56% of featherweight fights do go to decision, but 70.5% of their 17 combined UFC fights, and that's a pretty good sample size, have went to decision, and that's 9.8% more than the price of the line. And these guys are going to decision at almost a 15% clip higher than what the division does as a whole. So I went the other way and took that over 2.5, but now I got it at minus 115. Now that it's at minus 185, it still shows some value, but with Emmett getting older and with Mitchell taking the fight on short notice, I think this one has a little more finishing potential than maybe it shows on paper. Yeah, dude, and Matt Chalk says he'll never bet on a man who massacred his balls. And for those of you who don't know, he's talking about Bryce Mitchell, who actually put a power drill right through his nutsack. And that is not a joke. Men don't joke about putting a drill bit through their nutsack. That's horrific. That's not funny. You know, if you're laughing at that, you're sick. You're a sick man. But yeah, Bryce Mitchell put a, I guess you could, put a drill through something and then it goes down into something else. But your nuts should be directly below what you're drilling. And it's just bad craftsmanship. It's bad safety protocols to wind up putting a drill bit through your nuts. And, safety is very important in the octagon. So, yeah, he's going to have to work on his defense a little bit, Bryce Mitchell. All right. Next fight. What do we got here? We still got 5 more fights to break down. And it is going to be Vicente, the silent assassin, Luque at plus 285, going up against Ian Machado Garry at minus 360. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 150 for this fight. Let's first start talking about the silent assassin here, Vicente Luque, who's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage in this spot over Ian Garry. Surprising, as tall and as long as Garry is going to be Vicente with a 2-inch reach advantage. And Vicente has the overall and UFC experience advantages, 19 more pro fights, 170 more minutes of cage time, 9.5 more years as a pro fighter. Luque also has the UFC experience advantage over Ian Garry with 14 more fights and 135 more minutes of octagon time. Luque has always been a finisher. He's finished a very impressive 19 of his 22 pro wins. He's got 8 submissions and 11 knockouts, and 13 of his 15 UFC wins were finished inside the distance, 5 submissions and 8 knockouts in those 13 UFC finishes. He's dangerous wherever the fight goes. He has that dog in him for real, and he's always been one of the most durable guys in the division. You better come to fight if you're getting in there with Luque. Dude is dangerous, down to trade bombs, and he's slick with his submissions. And Luque has really good distance striking. He's always been defensively irresponsible with about a 55% distance striking defense, but that's because he's always trusted his chin and been willing to give one to take one. He stays very busy, attempting 13.72 distance strikes per minute, landing 6.93 of them for a way above average 50.5% accuracy. Luque has also been Luque also has power, landing 10 knockdowns in 20 UFC fights. He's getting them at 1.09% of the distance strikes that he lands, and he has a very impressive 8 wins and 1 loss record in the UFC to the KO. And considering the murderer's row of opponents he's faced, that's very impressive. Luque won't be out of his depth at distance striking range versus the slick and technical Ian Garry, and he is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here. And Luque is a very efficient grappler with a slick submission game. He only gets 1.04 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's racked up 14 takedowns in 20 UFC fights, and 8 of those 14 came in his last fight against Dos Anjos. We might be seeing a more reserved and defensively responsible Luque after the life-changing beating he took in the Jeff Neal fight, which caused brain hemorrhages for him. Luque showed versus Dos Anjos that he has the capability to mix in the wrestling in order to win minutes and not just rely on that front choke series of his to defend takedowns to keep fights standing. Luque was already an efficient grappler with slick submissions, but now it looks like he's willing to mix in some offensive grappling in order to win minutes, and that could really work in his favor in a matchup like this against Ian Garry. And Luque has fought the much better level of UFC competition, and it isn't even close. The metric is a bit deceiving because Gary's last 2 wins over D-Rod and Magny really bolstered his strength to schedule metric, but we know those guys aren't on the same level as Luque's recent opponents of Rafael Dos Anjos, Jeff Neal, Bilal Muhammad, Michael Chiesa, former champion Tyron Woodley. Now, Ian Garry 6 years younger. That's meaningful. And he's 4 inches taller than Vicente Luque. And Ian does his best work at distance striking range. He's long, he's fast, he's technical, and he's powerful. His ability to use his kicks to score points and maintain distance is top-notch. He's landed 4 knockdowns in 6 UFC fights, landing a knockdown on about 1% of the distance strikes that he's landed. And he's 3 wins and 0 losses to the knockout in his UFC career and 7-0 to the KO as a professional. Ian not only wins the moments, but also the minutes at distance. He's 3 wins and 0 losses to the decision in his UFC career, and he's 5-0 to the decision as a pro. So his ability to win minutes at distance striking range thus far in his career has really been on point. In the UFC, he has a positive 3.46 distance striking differential with 55.7% accuracy and 55% defense. He stays very busy, attempting 13.43 distance strikes per minute. That's 4.5 more strikes than his opponent's attempt per minute, landing 7.5 of them, which is 3.05 more than the divisional average. Everything Ian Garry does at distance striking range is way above average here. And you see these offensive numbers here, just all green, all way above average, except for the 55% distance striking defense. That's the problem, is the defense. That needs some work, and Luque hits hard, so he's going to need to clean that up sooner than later if he wants to continue climbing this welterweight ladder towards the top 5. Now, I think this fight comes down to what version of Vicente Luque we get. Do we get the pre-Jeff Neal fight version that's a dog that gets in the pocket, that trusts his chin and exchanges bombs until one man falls? Or do we get the version that we saw against Rafael dos Anjos, the guy who looked afraid to get hit, who clinched up, who went for takedowns, and who was more of a grinding, slow-paced minute winner? Now, I think both versions of Vicente Luque have paths to win versus Garry, but because of the size, the length, the youth, the striking, and the undefeated record, I have to think Luque needs to finish this fight in order to get a win. So the version of Luque that showed up versus Dos Anjos is not a guy I want to bet as an underdog. Garry's a phenomenal prospect. His striking is so clean. He uses his length so well. His kicks are so fast and dangerous, and his anti-grappling has always been solid, allowing him to keep fights standing over 81% of the time in the UFC. Like I said, there are paths for Luque here. He always could land a big shot. Luque has better power numbers over the bigger sample size compared to Garry, and Luque has very technical kickboxing and isn't out of his depth against anyone at distance striking range. And we saw Luque show the ability to win minutes in the clinch and with his wrestling versus Dos Anjos. So I fully understand people wanting to take the shot on the silent assassin at plus 290 here, but I'm going the other way. I'm going to pick Ian Garry to win this fight by decision. I think Luque slows this fight down, but has a hard time winning minutes in the grappling exchanges against the tall and long Garry. And I see Garry winning the minutes and moments at range. I'm really looking forward to this fight and seeing how Garry handles the step up in competition and which Vicente Luque shows up to this fight. Because of those unanswered questions on both sides, I don't see myself betting this fight, but the pick is going to be Ian Garry to win this one by decision. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. All right. Antonio saying, am I the only one who thinks Bryce is a boring fighter? The only exciting fight he had was when Ilya finished him. Well, I mean, he's a dominant grappler, and sometimes people don't like watching somebody that refuses to box and just continue and just shoots takedown after takedown after takedown. But some guys are very dominant with that approach, and when it works for Bryce, he's exactly that, dominant. James S saying, no, I'm agree you. We got Matt R saying, you competing with Liam Picks fights? If you are both going to do videos at the same time, why not just collab? No, I'm not competing with Liam Picks fights. I always do my show from 10 until midnight Central Time on Tuesday night. That's the time slot I've been doing for this show for 2 years now, actually. So no, I don't compete with Liam Picks fights. Liam switches the time of his show around, and we don't run by each other or ask each other for permission when to go live. So if Liam wants to go live when I'm live, that is his prerogative, and I got no problem with it. Antonio was saying, okay, glad I'm not alone. And we got James saying, crazy, the disrespect. Matt R saying, Bryce fights with the devil are pretty exciting. I would pay to see that, man. Hercule saying, you the best, Weezy. I would be cautious of betting on Bryce this week. That's a lot of juice to lay. Yeah, I think the value side is the Josh Emmett money line side. Short notice, Bryce does not deserve parlay. I agree. Single bet only. And Antonio Esparza is saying, what's Garry's takedown defense? Darian Weeks took him down. Yeah, the takedown defense is okay at 69.23%. It's slightly above average for the division. He's been taken down 4 times. But even though Ian Garry has only attempted 4 takedowns and his opponents have attempted 13. So, like, Ian Garry's attempted about maybe a little less than 75% of the takedowns. He's a little less than 25% of the more than 25% of the takedowns. He's getting 38% of the control time. So he's actually kind of an efficient grappler in that when he's getting takedowns, he's getting a little more control time in the clinch and in those takedowns than his opponents are getting against him. Ian Garry handpicked this fight, so I'm confident in Ian winning. Yeah, and don't forget, Ian used to train over there at Kill Cliff, where Luque trained. So he probably knows that Luque had a recent brain injury and was very tentative. And Ian Garry's looking to climb that ladder. So I'm not surprised that he picked this fight. Tiratea Paku in the room saying, sure, Weezy, better late than never. I appreciate you joining us, brother. And he's thinking about a max bet Shavkat inside the distance. Thoughts? I like Shav. Well, we're going to talk about that fight. Oh, no, 2 fights from now. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I do like Shavkat to win inside the distance, but I think the line is super wide. But anyway, let's move on to this next fight. It is going to be Tony Ferguson, El Kukui, the legend, plus 235, going up against Paddy the Baddie Pimblett, the favorite at minus 295. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 160 for this fight. Let's talk about Tony Ferguson first. He's going to be 1 inch taller and have a 3-inch reach advantage over Paddy Pimblett. And Tony has the overall and UFC experience advantages. He's got 11 more pro fights. He's got 140 more minutes in the pro cage and 4.5 more years as a professional. Tony also has 14 more UFC fights and 180 more minutes of octagon time, with these stats coming from 2013 to present. Tony was always a guy who broke his opponents with his durability and the volume and output that he put out there. He doesn't have one punch KO power, but when he was winning fights, he always broke his opponents in half, and everyone looked like they were thrown off a train after the fight. Tony has a positive 1.19 distance striking differential with way above average 47% accuracy and way below average 55% defense. And Tony has without question fought, beaten, and lost to the much better brand of competition in the UFC. Paddy Pimblett is 9 years younger than Tony Ferguson. At this point, Paddy is just much more durable. Ferguson sustained a life-changing beating in the Justin Gaethje fight, and he hasn't looked the same since. Paddy's chin is ironclad, and he'll definitely be the more durable fighter on Saturday. Paddy has been really high volume at distance striking range, averaging 18.56 distance strike attempts per minute. He's landing 8.03 of them, which is 3.45 more than the divisional average. Paddy flashes some power, and his durability allows him to walk forward like a zombie, willing to take one to give one and outlasting his opponents, dragging them into wars where he thrives. The old Tony would have cooked Paddy in this style of fight. But the 2023 version of El Cucuy is exactly the kind of fighter Paddy breaks with this pressure, pace, and volume. Paddy is 6-0 to the KO in his career. He definitely loves to stand and bang, which is part of why he's such a huge fan favorite. And Paddy's UFC grappling metrics are way below average when you look at the 25% takedown accuracy, the 56% takedown defense, and he gets out-controlled 46.64% to 10.8%. Paddy's only winning 18.8% of the control time positions in his fights, but he's also very aggressive on the mat, and he's got a BJJ black belt. Paddy is 10 wins and 1 loss to the submission in his pro career, and in the UFC, he's been very aggressive, averaging 2.42 submissions per 15 minutes. Going to the ground with Paddy is usually a mistake, and his back takes are very good, and he has a tricky submission game. So Paddy is a creative and opportunistic finisher, really wherever the fight goes. Tony Ferguson is washed, plain and simple. Yes, Paddy lost all 3 rounds to Jared Gordon last time out and is coming off a serious injury and a 1-year layoff. The UFC is desperate to get one of their cash cows and fan favorites a win, so they offered this fight to a guy who probably has less than a 10% chance to win this fight, and that might even be a bit generous. Tony Ferguson is one of my all-time favorite fighters. His aggressive style, which brought us so many entertaining wars, really wore on him. MMA is not a sport that brings many happy endings, and I don't think there's going to be a happy ending for Tony outside of a Vegas massage parlor. Paddy is younger. He's more explosive. He's the better submission grappler at this point, and he has more power, and he definitely has more durability on the feet. It would be nice to see Tony go out on a win, have a war with Paddy, with him finding a storybook late KO, but those days are over. Paddy even fighting Tony should be a clear indication how much the UFC needs Paddy to win, and these guys usually get what they want. This is an easy comeback spot after the injury and 1-year layoff for Paddy, and I'm going to pick him to win this one by second-round submission. So Paddy by sub over one of my favorite fighters in Tony Ferguson, but Tony is just so far past his prime at this point. He needs to hang it up, and this fight shouldn't have even been sanctioned, but the reason it was is because the UFC is desperate to get Paddy Pimblett wins, and they are very desperate. Therefore, they're giving him one guy who probably can't beat anybody left in the UFC in this weight class. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. JP Taylor saying that Shavkat's going to shave Wonder Boy's ass. It's a pretty popular opinion this week. Low T City Ortega in the room. What's up, dude? Paddy is a lock. Just my humble opinion. I think Tony is beyond gone, and I agree. I mean, I don't use the word lock, especially not with Paddy Pimblett, who lost all 3 rounds to Jared Gordon and then is coming off a serious injury. But yeah, man, I mean, Tony's so washed. We got Uncle Weezy. Let's go. Let's end the year with a banger, says my guy Breezy978. Let's do it, man. Antonio Esparza is saying, I truly think Paddy should be minus 600. Tony simply shouldn't be fighting. I couldn't agree more. Tony is 39. His brain age is 173. And I think that's right on point, JP. Chaz Bono's manly beard saying when Tony won, he also looked like he was thrown from a slightly slower moving train. He's paying the Pied Piper, and now he's a soft-boiled scrambled egg. And yes, sir, that is all correct, because definitely he took a lot of damage to give a lot of damage. This fight should not be sanctioned, says Brady. UFC should be ashamed. And I mean, they're not. They're shameless. That's why, and that was why I made that joke on Twitter when this fight got announced. I retweeted Marcel Dorf's tweet, and I said, I guess Matt Hughes wasn't available, because that's how desperate they are to get this guy wins. They're fixing fights on the scorecards for him, and then they're giving him the biggest name with the least possible chance of winning. Sub is plus 275 for Paddy. I think that's pretty for Paddy. Yeah, I think that's not bad. I think that's probably how he gets it done. Sad fight, says JP Taylor. I couldn't agree more. I have a half unit bet on Tony when the line came out at plus 320. It has dropped. The cash out gives me money back. Should I cash out and look for value somewhere else? I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe Tony's got one more left in him, but I just don't see it, I don't see it. I mean, I think maybe cash out and put cash out and put it on Emmett, because Emmett still has a chance to win, cash out and put it on one of these other, underdogs. It doesn't have massive brain damage at this point. Why is Paddy an upcoming title contender fighting Tony? He's not an upcoming title contender. He's probably never going to crack the top 15. He's not a good enough fighter to do that, but he's a very entertaining fighter. He's got a very fan-friendly style. He's very popular on social media. And I keep saying, you watch out. When Paddy Pimblett learns how to speak English, he's going to be a huge star, you guys. But there's a couple things that need to happen. He needs to clean up his striking defense. It's fucking terrible. He needs to learn how to speak English. He needs to, but the defense, I think, is really the biggest thing, because that chin is going to crack at some point. And when it does, that striking defense is going to have him getting knocked out in the first round of every damn fight. I mean, Paddy Pimblett is just, he's Tony Ferguson 10 years from now, because that's how much damage he takes in all of his fights, because he's so defensively irresponsible, because he loves to get into wars, because he loves to trust his chin. But the cost of that long term is a heavy, heavy price to pay. I'm sure there was someone older like Michael Johnson. Yeah, Michael Johnson beats him. Michael Johnson's a better wrestler than Paddy Pimblett, and he's a much cleaner striker. Speaking of happy endings, I'm going to Vegas in late February. Any recommendations? Dude, I haven't been to Vegas in years. Dude, I definitely need to get out there, see some of the good folks from the community that are out there. My guy Luque, sparring with Reality, moved out to Vegas. I'd love to hang out with him out there. I'd definitely love to get out to Vegas, man. And as far as happy endings, I don't know, man. I don't know. So, but I'm sure there are a ton of places that could get you done, Vic. What's Paddy by first round KO? Well, on Bet Online, Paddy Pimblett first round KO is plus 650. It's a pretty juicy number. We got JP saying put it on Lipski, Paku. I tend to agree. I think Lipski's a good plus money bet as well. Antonio saying, what would you line Tony versus Chris Wade right now? I mean, I think Chris Wade can still wrestle. I'm not lining Tony as a favorite versus anyone. KO 1 plus 700. That's not bad. We got, I have a half unit bet on Lipski. Okay, there you go. So you're already on that underdog play when Paddy learns how to speak English. I'm glad you like that one. Fight talk only. It's one of my favorite jokes. Double it up. Stack them like you know what. There you go. Great advice. All right, you guys, let's move on to the Shavkat-Rakhmonov fight here, as we've got Shavkat, a massive favorite over Wonderboy Thompson here. Minus 650 on the money line is Rakhmonov. Plus 475 is the underdog in Thompson. Fight doesn't go to decision here. And minus 220 for this fight. So let's first start talking about the incredible Shavkat-Rakhmonov, who is 11 years younger. He's 1 inch taller, and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage over Wonderboy. So really nice measurables advantages here on the Rakhmonov side. Shavkat's such a dangerous moment winner wherever the fight goes. He's patient yet opportunistic on the feet, in the clinch, and on the ground. Shavkat's got a 100% finish rate in 17 pro fights to go along with the spotless undefeated record. 9 submissions and 8 knockouts means no matter where the fight takes place, you're not safe when you're sharing the cage with the Nomad. Shavkat is such a dangerous striker. He's huge for the weight class. He uses that length well by using a stiff jab and precise long-range kicks. Shavkat's got a positive 1.44 distance striking differential with way above average 54% accuracy, a 0.93% distant knockdown percentage, and around average 57.5% distance striking defense. Shavkat pressures while he's on the feet. His output is fairly low, but he's so accurate and powerful that when he does eventually land big, his finishing instincts kick in and he swarms his opponent looking for the finish. Even though Shavkat can be hittable sometimes, he makes up for it by having a granite chin and the conditioning to continue to pressure his opponents even when he's getting touched up. The combination of the conditioning and the durability for Shavkat is what really is going to carry him a really long way in the welterweight division, because those are things that most people don't have at the levels that Shavkat has them at. And Shavkat's just as dangerous in the clinch and grappling exchanges as he is at distance. Shavkat's got 4 UFC takedowns. He's allowed 0. He's got 100% takedown defense on 5 attempts against. He's out-controlling his opponents 44.3% to 12.6%, winning almost 78% of the control time positions his fights have been in. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Shavkat is 9 wins and 0 losses to the submission in his pro career, and he's finished all 4 of his UFC submission attempts. So he's only attempted 4 submissions in the UFC, and he's got 4 submission victories. He has guillotine choke finishes over Alex Oliveira and Neil Magny, and rear naked choke submissions over Jeff Neal and Michel Prazeres. What's even scarier is Shavkat's ground and pound. It's without question elite, and a lot of his career knockout wins come by way of pounding the heads of his opponents through the canvas from top position. His arm-in guillotine choke is legendary. Magny tapped with 3 seconds left in the round, even though Shavkat only had that arm-in guillotine for a few seconds. His ability to finish fights in the grappling exchanges is fucking scary. And even though Shavkat only has 5 UFC fights to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's 17, and Thompson's actually fought for the belt twice, Shavkat's strength of schedule metrics are actually comparable to Wonderboy's due to the fact that he's fought solid competition from day one, like Alex Oliveira, Michel Prazeres, Carlston Harris, Neil Magny, and Jeff Neal. I still favor Thompson's overall strength of schedule, obviously, but it should be noted that Shavkat hasn't had any easy fights yet in the UFC. Now, Stephen Thompson is going to have the overall and the UFC experience advantages with 7 more pro fights, 220 more minutes of cage time, and 4.5 more years as a pro, in addition to having 12 more UFC fights and 220 more minutes of octagon time. Stephen Thompson is a phenomenal striker. Over a 210-minute sample size of UFC distance striking statistics, Thompson has a positive 1.98 distance striking differential with 44% accuracy and almost 62% defense. He has a traditional martial arts bladed karate stance. He bounces up and down on his toes. He darts in and out of range with his hands very low. He relies on lateral movement and footwork for his defense, and it works pretty well, as he's only been knocked out once in 24 pro fights. Steven has fast hands, powerful kicks that come from all angles, and serious power, having landed 9 UFC knockdowns in 17 fights. He's landing a knockdown on 0.91% of the distance strikes that he lands. As long as this fight is on the feet, Thompson will be the better minute winner and just as likely of a guy to win moments as Shavkat is at distance. Make no mistake, Thompson needs to keep this fight standing at all costs, because if he does, he has a very good chance to win this fight, despite what the odds are telling you. And Thompson has 12 more UFC fights and has fought for the strap twice. His last 5 fights were against Kevin Holland, Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns, Jeff Neal, and Vicente Luque. He's fought the tougher strength of schedule, and with that 40-year-old age comes a lot of experience against the toughest welterweights in the world. And he's outstruck every single one of them, with the exception of getting caught by that Superman punch in the Pettis fight and that bizarre Darren Till fight. So it's always exciting when the future of the division gets showcase spots on pay-per-view cards. Shavkat is special. He finds moments in every single fight, whether it's landing a spinning hook kick at range or dropping Gilly in the clinch. Shavkat looks to finish, and he does it every damn time. Accurate, powerful, crisp striking, dangerous and opportunistic submission grappling, conditioning for days, a granite chin, and a warrior spirit, and the size you can't teach. That's enormous frame for the weight class that he has. Stephen Thompson, on the other side, is a very experienced and well-tested veteran with elite distance striking skills and a unique problematic style to deal with on the feet. He moves well, has minute and moment winning skills at range, and he's also a lifelong martial artist who knows what it's like to be under the bright lights and fight for the title. Shavkat needs to fight smart here. Stephen Thompson has won only one fight in the UFC where he was taken down, and that was the Kevin Holland fight, where Kevin voluntarily let him back up both times after taking him down. If Shavkat commits to the grappling and makes this a clinch and ground fight, he will most likely make this look easy and pay off that big price tag of his. However, if he plays the distance striking battle with Stephen, then I would say this fight favors Thompson. But even then, still only 60-40, I would say, because of the threat of the grappling, the size and length of Shavkat, and because Shavkat is also very dangerous at range. But I'm picking Shavkat to win, and it's going to be by second round, ground and pound KO. The Nomad getting the job done again. Why did that happen? Shavkat KO round 2. The ground and pound is legendary, and Stephen Thompson has got one tough row to hoe here on Saturday going up against the Nomad, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We have got Shavkat is favored to win by sub at plus 125, but Wonderboy has never been subbed. What do the bookies know that we don't? That Shavkat can sub literally anybody. I mean, his guillotine is elite. His ground and pound is elite, and he's way better on the ground than Stephen Thompson. So I think the books know that the submission is probably the more likely path, just because you see more submissions than KOs once fights get to the ground. So that's probably why they think that it's the more likely way that he finishes. Shavkat via rear naked choke, Paddy via rear naked choke. Thoughts, Ankh? Yeah, I think both of those are probably live. I think Shavkat. Yeah, I think that's probably how they both win. I mean, I'm picking the ground and pound, but I could see rear naked choke over Stephen more than I could see guillotine, because you don't see really Thompson putting his head in there. He's not going to try to take down Shavkat. Shavkat Paddy sub parlay plus 790. That's not bad. I like that, Daz Files. I think it's a pretty good parlay there for submission props. Wonderboy money line, says Lucas Olzawi. It's a fat number. Shavkat Rakhmonov just sounds like somebody who would beat your ass. Yep. Very accurate. Lucas, just donate that money in a charity, bro. Yeah, I mean, dude, this guy Rakhmonov, he's so scary, dude. Daz, yeah, he likes it, man. Last card of you dogs will be barking. Yeah, dude. I mean, I like a lot of dogs on this card. It's just that as much as I want to like Stephen Thompson in this spot and think that, yeah, he could absolutely win the distance striking battle here, I don't think that Shavkat's going to let him do that. And DGen for Life saying Oliveira and Darius couldn't sub for Paddy ain't. Yeah, but even then, that was just a couple fights ago. And don't forget, Oliveira had his arm broken in half. The 2023 version of fucking Tony probably taps to that arm bar, you know. And Dariush couldn't sub him either. That's pretty impressive. But don't forget, Bobby Green just subbed him. Nate Diaz subbed him. So, yeah, that's the thing. It's like Oliveira and Dariush were Tony a little bit closer to that winning streak that he was on. You know, now that he fought Nate Diaz, now that he fought Bobby Green, we're actually seeing him get finished by guys that probably would have never finished him back in the day. So anyway, let's move on to the next fight. 80 of you guys hanging out live in here. I appreciate each and every one of you. It's a good time. We've had pretty big audiences here in the past, but 80 is really good for a Tuesday night after midnight here. So yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. Hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and please leave me a comment down below. Let me know who you like this week. If you got any special picks or lines that you're looking at, I always love interacting with you guys in the comments section. And let's move on to the next fight, which is one of the 2 title fights of the night. It is going to be Alexander the Cannibal Pantoja, the favorite and the champion at -190, going up against Brandon Raw Dog Royval at +160. Fight doesn't go to decision. Juice to the tits at -550 for this fight. So let's get these stats up on the screen for you guys. And let's talk first about the advantages that Alexander the Cannibal Pantoja has in this matchup. So Alex has the overall and the UFC experience advantages in comparison to Royval. Alex has 10 more pro fights, 170 more minutes in the pro cage, and 5 more years as a pro fighter. Alex also has the UFC experience advantage with 6 more fights and 100 more minutes of octagon time. Alex is a very durable fighter. He's never been finished in 31 pro fights and 5 pro losses. And he's a capable, above-average UFC striker. He has a positive 0.59 distance striking differential, this Pantoja, 44.5% accuracy, and he's got a 0.77% distance knockdown percentage. Alex has landed 4 UFC knockdowns, and he's only absorbed 1. He throws, he lands, and is accurate at above average levels for the division, but his defense is definitely below average, and he's hittable at distance striking range. Pantoja does his best work in the grappling exchanges. Alex is 10-0 to the career, in his career to the sub, and he's 4-0 to the sub in the UFC. Pantoja has attempted 38 UFC takedowns, and his opponents have attempted 69 against him. But even though Alex only attempts 35.5% of the total takedowns in his fights, he wins almost 62% of the control time positions, outcontrolling his opponents 24.2% to 15%. Alex is a master of getting to his opponent's back, locking in the body triangle, and finishing with the rear naked choke, or winning the minutes and riding out the round. 8 of Alex's 10 career submission wins come by way of neck crank or rear naked choke, with the only other submission wins being an armbar in his pro debut and a triangle choke win versus Damasio Page, which was his last pro fight before joining the UFC. Alex is a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and his minute and moment-winning capabilities in the grappling exchanges are what makes him an elite fighter and a champion. Now, these guys have similar overall UFC strength to schedule metrics, but I do like Alexander Pantoja's wins just a little bit better than Royval's. Now, Brandon Royval is going to have all the measurables advantages in this spot. He's 2.5 years younger than Alex. He's 4 inches taller, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage, in addition to being the southpaw in this southpaw versus orthodox matchup, which is also statistically significant. Even though both of these guys are dangerous finishers, it's Royval who has the better finish rates as a pro. He's got an 87% finish rate as a pro compared to 69% for Pantoja. And in the UFC, Royval's finishing 80% of his 5 wins, while Pantoja's finished 60% of his 10 wins. The frantic pace Royval fights with is what opens the door to his finishes. He's super aggressive on the feet with his pressure and output. He attempts 18.07 distance strikes per minute. And on the mat, he chains together submission attempts nonstop, looking for submissions, sweeps, and strikes. Royval won't fuck off. And if you don't have the conditioning to deal with his pace, he can easily break you later in fights. And Royval's a volume monster on the feet. He has a solid chin, and he trusts it. He moves forward. He spams volume at 18 distance strike attempts per minute. he lands 6.26 of them, which isn't accurate at less than 35%. But when you throw a ton of shit against the wall, some of it's going to stick. Royval outpaces his opponents at range by 7.29 attempts per minute, and he also flashes power. Royval's volume already makes him dangerous, but he's landed 3 knockdowns in only 7 UFC fights, and his distance knockdown percentage is elite for the division at 2.48%. Can you handle the chaos Royval brings? That's always the question that needs to be asked. Now, Royval loses a ton of minutes on the ground. He has only attempted 2 takedowns in 7 UFC fights, and his takedown defense is a pitiful 39% on 28 attempts against. That being said, Brandon loves being on the ground, so he could start to work his guard submission game, and he's very aggressive, chaining together his submission attempts. He's 9 wins and 1 loss in his career to the submission, with his only submission loss coming against Pantoja in their first fight. Brandon attempts 2.32 submissions per 15 minutes, and he gets 0.66 reverses per 15 minutes. So he tends to be in high-volume grappling matchups that involve a lot of scrambling, reverses, get-ups, mat returns, and submission attempts, and he has the conditioning to push that pace for a surprisingly long time. Don't forget, Brandon Royval trains at Elevation in Englewood, Colorado, over there at Factory X Muay Thai. So the guy can push a pace, and a heavy one, for a long time. And Brandon has about half the UFC fights that Pantoja does, but on the aggregate, he's faced just as good of win-loss ratioed opposition, and he's actually faced the slightly more experienced fighters on the aggregate. So don't be fooled. Just because Pantoja is champ, it doesn't mean he's faced way better dudes than Royval has. So Pantoja's already beaten Royval once, and it was because Royval got sloppy in a scramble and gave up his back to Alex. And you cannot do that against a grappler of Alexander Pantoja's quality. I like the measurables advantages Royval has. I love his relentless pace and his offensive submission attack. I think he's the flashier, more powerful striker as well. He's a super fun fighter to watch, but he leaves holes. He gives up his back and scrambles sometimes and is way too hittable at distance with only a 50% distance striking defense. And Pantoja's a better grappler than Royval is. Alex can take Royval whenever the pressure and pace that Royval brings on the feet is too much for Alex to handle. And once it's on the mat, Alex should be able to stay safe from the submission attempts of Royval. Pass his guard, wait for Royval to make a crucial mistake, give up his back, lock in that rear naked choke. Obviously, with the pace Royval brings and the terrible striking defense both guys have, it's so hard to see this fight going the distance, but the bookies are on it. I'm picking Pantoja to win this fight, and I'm going to pick him to do it by first-round submission. His grappling game is a couple of notches above Royval's. All he needs to do is get it to the ground and set traps or wait for a mistake, and this fight is over. So the pick is going to be Alexander, the Cannibal Pantoja, to do it by submission in round number 1. I cannot wait for this fight. You know, Royval pushes that hellacious pace, and Pantoja is hilarious because he looks like he's dying after round 1 of his fights. He looks like he's completely gassed. And when he fought Moreno, after round 1, he looked completely dead on the stool. And I was like, oh my God, Pantoja's got 4 more rounds to go, and he looks done for. And then Moreno came out in round 2 and was putting a pace on Pantoja and outlanding him on the feet. And I was like, oh man, Pantoja is going to get smoked here. But this dude, he's so durable. He's definitely got that dog in him. And there's no quit anywhere in this guy's psyche or brain. There's no quit there at all. So I think Pantoja is going to be able to just kind of be there until Brandon makes that big mistake. And Brandon makes too many goddamn mistakes, whether it's with his striking defense or with his grappling transitions. And Pantoja is going to get on his back, find that rear naked choke, and I don't think it's going to take long. Pantoja by first round submission. What are you guys saying in the chat here? Am I crazy? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Daz File saying, thanks, Weezy in chat. And oh, so stoned. Thought that was a wind up. We got Antonio saying Royval is from Denver and trains there year round. You think that gives him the cardio advantage in this fight? Yes, I do. I do think he has got the cardio advantage in this fight. I'll be rooting my ass off for Raw Dog. Dude, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of his too. I love watching that dude fight. And this is going to be an amazing fight. And we got Daz File saying, come on, Royval. We got JJ saying, oi, sup, Bunk? Did you see Pantoja working out in the UFC vlog? He seemed pretty intense. Does he want to defend this title, hell or high water, in your opinion? Yeah, I think he does, and he's beaten this guy already. So I think he's set up to get this job done. He's beaten this guy. The last time he fought against Brandon Moreno, he'd beaten that dude twice. You know, Brandon doesn't bring anything besides that cardio and ability to be able to outlast Pantoja that makes me worry about him knocking out Pantoja. I don't think anybody's knocking out Pantoja. The guy can take flush shots to the head and eat them like flapjacks. And I mean, I don't think anybody's submitting Pantoja because he's such an elite, high-level black belt. The only way I see it happening is if this fight gets into the 4th or 5th round and Royval still hasn't gotten tired. He's still pushing that pace. I think maybe he could break Pantoja late, but I do see this being an and still here. Fight Talk only saying, remember when Royval was crying because he had to go back to work a day after his UFC win? Now he's fighting for a world title, man. I remember that. That was wild, dude. I remember he's like, I got to go to work on Monday, man. That was crazy, dude. We got Matthew Chalk saying, guys very rarely win a rematch after losing the prior fight. Yeah, it's hard to do, man. Low T City Ortega saying, under seems too easy. Could see a war with a late finish from either. That's the thing that's keeping me off betting violence here, is that Pantoja is stupid durable, and Royval is also very durable with excellent conditioning. We got Antonio Esparza. Do you think Pantoja beat Moreno? I truly thought he lost that fight. Well, I think he won it 3 rounds to 2. I think he definitely won it with the grappling exchanges, but I thought that Moreno outboxed the shit out of him at distance. And we got Lexicon is in the room saying, peace, Uncle Weezy. Peace right back to you, brother. Good to see you hanging out in here. And that brings us, you guys, to the main event of the evening. We've got Leon Rocky Edwards going up against Colby Covington. Leon is a minus 155 favorite. Colby plus 135 on the underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision, plus money at plus 155. Can't wait for this fight. So, Leon Scott, he's going to have nice measurables advantages in this matchup over Colby. He's 3.5 years younger. He's 3 inches taller, and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage over Colby. He's also the southpaw in this southpaw versus orthodox matchup, which is a statistical advantage, but I'm not sure if that matters because Colby usually fights southpaw. Leon has the overall and UFC experience advantages. He's younger and more experienced, which is a good combination. Leon has 5 more pro fights, over 50 more minutes of pro cage time, and 7 more months as a professional fighter. And Leon actually has 1 more UFC fight and 15 more minutes of octagon time compared to Colby. And Leon is very durable. He's never been finished in 25 pro fights, while Colby has been finished in 2 of 3 pro losses. Leon is known for being a very clean and technical kickboxer. He's extremely low volume, only attempting 7.98 distance strikes per minute, which is way less than the 18.21 distance strike attempts per minute that Colby tries. But Leon is very accurate at 48%. He's got a positive 0.69 distance striking differential, and he flashes power, landing 5 knockdowns in 16 UFC fights, and he has 3 UFC knockouts to his credit, including the highlight reel head kick finish over Kamaru Usman that got him the belt. Leon is a patient counter striker, and because of how effective he is at that style, it slows down the volume of his opponents, and they only attempt 7.8 distance strikes per minute against Leon, which is 0.18 less than Leon attempts. So Leon does a good job of kind of sucking his opponent into that low volume counter striking match where he really excels at winning minutes. Leon is 9 wins and 2 losses to the decision in his UFC career, and he does a really nice job of winning minutes with that counter heavy style at distance. And Leon's UFC strength to schedule overall and in his wins slightly outranks Colby in ratio overall, 1.88 for Leon Scott, 1.64 for Colby, and the ratio in the wins is better than Colby's at 1.67 for Scott and 1.43 for Colby Covington. Now, Colby's best attributes as a mixed martial artist are his conditioning, his pace, his wrestling, and high volume striking output. That combination of attributes is too much for most fighters to handle. Colby categorically refuses to fuck off. He attempts 18.21 distance strikes per minute, 7.15 more than the divisional average. And he lands 6.36 of them, which is almost 2 more than the divisional average. He attempts 8.82 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's 5.05 more than the divisional average. And he lands 4.05 of them. That's 2.71 more than the divisional average. Wherever the fight goes, Colby is pressuring, he's throwing, he's clinching, he's grinding, he's getting takedowns and landing ground and pound while he tries to work to dominant positions. And he has the necessary conditioning to push this annoying pace on his opponents for the full 25 minutes. Colby's striking is just okay, but he does a great job of making his striking game suit his strengths. And he uses his striking to set the pace, drown his opponents in volume and forward pressure while setting up the entries on his takedowns. Colby is right-handed, but he strikes southpaw like a lot of wrestlers because it helps them set up their takedowns. Colby attempts 18.21 distance strikes per minute, 5.89 more than his opponents do per minute. He has below average 35% accuracy and about average 60% defense, but the volume and forward pressure suit his overall fighting style, and he only spends 50.57% of the 248 minutes of octagon time that he's spent in the UFC at distance striking range. So he does an excellent job of using his striking to set up what he does best, his suffocating and super annoying grappling game. And the wrestling is where Colby makes his money. Colby has 67 UFC takedowns in 16 fights, and he's only allowed 7. He gets 4.05 takedowns per 15 minutes on 8.82 attempts, and he's so focused on getting top position and control of his opponents, and it shows in the numbers. Almost 47% control time for, with only 2.53% control time allowed. That's the trademark of a position over submission wrestler, also known as a grinder. Colby was a high school state champion wrestler in Oregon. He won the junior college wrestling title as a freshman with a 34-0 record, and he was a 2-time NCAA tournament qualifier, Division I, as a junior and senior at Oregon State University. So Colby's high-level wrestling accolades are unquestioned, and his UFC grappling metrics are a great representation of how dominant of a grappler Colby Covington is. Colby recently was awarded his BJJ black belt from Cesar Carnero over at MMA Masters. Grappling and pace are the cornerstones of Colby's MMA game, and he does both of those things at an elite level. So I've been waiting for this fight for a long time. Such an interesting matchup between two elite mixed martial artists. The precise striking, the well-rounded game of Leon Scott against the pace, the pressure, and the wrestling of Colby Covington. Which one of these guys is going to impose their will? Colby's coming off a 1 year and 9 month layoff for this title shot, and it'll most likely be his last crack at it. He's been waiting for this opportunity for so long now, he can't fuck this up. Here's an interesting stat. We already talked about how dominant Colby's grappling metrics are, but consider this. Colby fought Kamaru Usman twice and Damian Maia once. All three of those matchups were 5-round fights. So Nobody has success wrestling against Kamaru Usman, and you don't go to the ground with Demian Maia under any circumstances, right? So what I did was I removed those fights from his stats to see how his grappling metrics would look against non-dominant wrestler grapplers. Somebody that would fit into that category would be somebody like Leon Edwards. And his metrics, Colby Covington's metrics, with the 2 Usman fights removed and the Maia fight removed, now he's getting, instead of 4.05 takedowns per 15 minutes, he's getting 5.46 takedowns per 15 minutes on 11 attempts per 15 minutes instead of 8.82. He gets 61.26% control time for, while allowing 2.61% control time to his opponents, winning 96% of the control time positions those fights were in. Colby's ability to win minutes in grappling positions is phenomenal. So it's troubling that Leon Edwards' UFC fights have taken place in control time positions, an aggregate of 45.5% of his total cage time. Make no mistake, if this fight takes place in the center of the cage at kickboxing range, Leon is going to be more accurate, much faster, the way better range manager, and the guy who's way more likely to win moments via a straight left or a headshot bang head kick. Leon is so accurate and such a talented and sharp counter striker. And if Colby can't get the wrestling going, it's probably just a matter of time before Leon sets up the fight-ending shot. Leon doesn't like pressure, though. And I think we can count on Colby to bring that pressure, get Leon moving backwards, use his striking to set up the clinch entries, then start chaining takedown attempts together until he gets Leon down, advances to a dominant position, and rides out rounds and eats up the minute of the fight. And if we see the best version of Colby, I don't think Leon will be able to stop it. Right now, Leon's minus 155, Colby's plus 135, and that line makes a lot of sense to me. Leon is the champion, and you have to beat the champion in order to be the champion. And since this fight probably goes to decision, Colby is going to have to be dominant in order to get the nod. And I think Leon is the way better moment winner at distance striking range, so I could see him stealing rounds with big strikes or even finding a fight-ending KO. If Colby gets to about plus 150 on the money line or to plus 250 or better on the decision line, that's something that I'm going to be betting, because when I looked at how dominant Colby's pressure and wrestling were when he was not facing Kamaru Usman or Demian Maia, it led me to believe that he's got what it takes to win this fight, to win 4 out of 5 rounds with that pressure, with that volume, making Leon constantly back up and defend takedowns. And I think he will get to dominant positions in 2 or 3 of these rounds. And if he does that, I think he wins this fight. The pick is Colby Chaos Covington to win by decision and new. Can't wait for this fight, you guys. We did it. We broke down all 14 fights on this card. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. We've got Low T City Ortega saying, under seems too easy. Could see a war with a late finish from either. Yeah, man, it's going to be a great fight. Do I think Pantoja? Oh, I already read all this. Yeah. We got Low T City saying America. Fuck yeah, let's go, Low T City Ortega. We got Leon won by majority decision against Usman his last fight. What's the difference between majority and unanimous decision? So, Antonio, what had happened in that fight was Leon had a point taken away for grabbing the cage. So they had Leon winning 4 of the 5 rounds on 2 of the scorecards, which made it, instead of 49-46, because the point deduction was 48-46. But one of the judges had it had Leon winning 3 rounds to 2. But because Leon had a point taken away, it wound up being 47-47 on that scorecard. So a majority decision means 2 judges had it in favor of the winner, while one judge had it as a draw. So it's called a majority decision. We got Anthony W saying he went Colby 5th round KO, TKO, wears him out. I could see it happening, man. I mean, especially if he's having success with the pressure and the wrestling and the top control here. And ring a ding, ding, you guys. Massive donation from my guy Victor de Jesus, $50 for his Uncle Weezy, saying happy holidays, Weezy. Thank you for all your time and stats in 2023. Get yourself a bottle of tequila for New Year's on me, and New Year's Day is my birthday, baby. So I'm going to use that $50 to buy myself a bottle of tequila and get ripped, son. Thank you so much, Victor, for the extremely, extremely generous donation. Thank you so much for being a Patreon member and a supporter of the channel. It's people like you that allow me to show up here every Tuesday, 10 o'clock Central Time, and break these fights down for you guys. Thank you so much. Anthony W saying a W. He's saying Colby knows it's his last chance. Leon's high is over. Let's go. And new ×2. Let's go. Let's see. That would be Royval and Covington and new ×2, man. US. And we've got the Cuban assassin in the room saying the Colby fight will be judged by Derek Clearly, Sal D'Amato, and Chris Lee. Wow. Chris Lee, horrible judge. Derek Clearly, horrible judge. Sal D'Amato's been much better lately, but he's given some horrible scorecards in the past. Herb Dean, referee, as long as it's not Mark Goddard, I'm happy. I think it could be fair as long as Mark Goddard is not the ref. We got Leon only wins by KO or sub. If it's decision, then Colby wins 100%. Yeah, we'll see. I like Leon to outstrike him and win a close decision. I think that could absolutely happen, Matthew. Colby 5th round finish, that would be awesome. Covington sub odds are so silly, they make the prop interesting. Considering that he's a controlled grappler who doesn't focus on ground striking. Yeah, he could get a rear naked choke. He's a black belt now. Will Ask Weezy be tomorrow? Yes, it will. Ask Weezy, 10 o'clock Central Time, right here on this channel tomorrow. Leon is going to get tired is what I'm banking on. Literally, LOL, pulls him. Let's go. And Antonio saying deep water quick. I think that's where he's going to be going here, into the deep waters. And I think Colby's going to swim there. All right, you guys. Bootsy Collins, Memorial. Dogs are barking. Pick of the week. We need a plus money number. We need somebody that's going to give us a fat cash by pulling out a win that nobody expects him to. And who better than Donald Trump's favorite fighter, Colby Chaos Covington, by decision, plus 250. Bet Rivers Sportsbook. I love this line. I'm betting this line, probably for a full unit, because Colby's aggressiveness against non-grapplers is going to be something that's going to win him a ton of minutes in this fight, and it's not going to let Leon Edwards fight the style of fight that he's most comfortable fighting. So that is the Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week. I want the Patreon members to look out for my track bets. I've only got one track bet so far. It is the over 2.5 rounds in the Mitchell-Emmett fight at -115 for 1.15 units. I'm going to be adding Colby Covington by decision and maybe a little bit of Colby Covington money line. I will probably be adding Martin Buday's money line and Buday inside the distance. I will probably be parlaying fight doesn't go to decision for Buday versus Gaziev with the Alexander Pantoja money line. And I'm also taking a long look at the Ariane Lipski money lines and the Josh Emmett money lines, because I think that they're dog or pass spots at these prices, and I think that there's paths to victory for those fighters. So we've given you the dog pick of the week. I've given you my track bets of the week. I have a prize picks play that I like here, and the prize picks play that I like is Leon Scott under or less than 76.5 significant strikes. And here's why. Colby Covington only absorbs 3.05 significant strikes per minute, and Leon Edwards lands less than that at 2.8. But when Colby Covington is in control time positions, he's only absorbing 1.13 significant strikes per minute. if this fight were to go to full 25 minutes and Leon Edwards landed 3 significant strikes per minute, which is actually more than he usually lands, that only gets us up to 75. So what happens if this fight ends early? If Colby does dominate in the grappling exchanges, or if Colby gets clipped early and knocked out? I love the under 76.5 significant strikes here for Leon Edwards. I think it's a great line. And we're going to pair that up with a violence line that I like, which is going to be the Martin Buday less than 11.5 minutes of fight time. $20 to win 60, $100 to win 300, whatever it is that you're looking to do here. That is your prize picks play of the week. Leon Scott, less than 76.5 significant strikes, and Martin Buday, less than 11.5 minutes of fight time, which brings us to the last order of business. And I didn't even write it down. Who do you guys in the chat think is going to be the ass shaving of the week? Who do you think is going to get it done? Who's going to get it done violently? That is the question. Let me know in the chat who you guys are thinking, and I will tell you who I am going with. All right. Let's see here. We got good night, Unc. Appreciate your time, says Antonio. I appreciate you hanging out. We got Anthony saying good stuff, Unc. Oh my God, LOL, says Matthew Chalk. My money's on Colby already. All right. I like it, man. We got Ash shaving his pants. Let's go. What did you decide on Mitchell Emmett? I picked Emmett 3rd round KO on Tapology. I've got Bryce Mitchell by decision in that fight, but I think Emmett's the value side on the money line. Most aesthetic physique, gassing. Yeah, gassing is right, man. And there's a lot of gassers on this card. We got Anthony W. says Jacoby will be the ass shaving of the week. Andy, AKO Short Round, says Pimblett by murder. We got the Cuban Assassin saying Wonder Boy is getting his ass shaved wonderfully. We got Lexicon saying Shavcat. We got Jay Boog saying I think you will take Paddy. And we got Fender Jazz saying Rachmanov for ass shaving. Thanks for the show. The ass shaving of the week, you guys, is going to be Alexander Pantoja to shave the ass of Brandon Royval. I think he's getting a submission. I think he's going to get it quickly here. I just don't think that Brandon is clean enough on the ground in order to keep this man from getting his back and sinking in that rear naked choke. So I'm going to be betting Alexander Pantoja inside the distance at the best line that I can find this week. And I do think that he's going to get a 1st or a 2nd round submission here against Brandon Royval. And I think that that will complete the ass shaving of the week. And still for the ass shaving of the week, and then and new for the Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week, Colby Chaos Covington. 73 of you guys still hanging out live here with me on almost a 3-hour show where we broke down 14 fights. Thank you guys for hanging out. We did the work today. We really put it in, but I think I gave you enough information to give you some spots to find ways to stack cashed tickets like flapjacks for this, the last UFC event of the year, UFC 296. God bless each and every one of you guys for hanging out. I'll see you right back here, 10 o'clock Central Time for Ask Weezy right here on Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel. And tomorrow, 8 o'clock Central Time on the Pub Sports Radio, I'll be doing the DFS show. And then keep an eye out on the MMA Engine YouTube channel, 2 o'clock Central Time on Thursday afternoon. Myself, Lou Betcha, DFS by the Numbers, Monk Maddox will be doing the last props to consider and maybe bet of the year. Let's stack cashed tickets like flapjacks for UFC 296. Thank you so much for hanging out, you guys. We got Anthony saying Luque sleeps Garry cold. We got Antonio saying, no, Unc, we all want Raw Dog to win. I think he's getting his ass shaved, bro. Cheeky Elbow saying, question is, are you proud of me? Am I proud of you, Cheeky Elbow? I am proud of you. We got Anthony W saying, yeah, bro, Team Raw Dog, damn, Unc, making us pick like that. Lexicon doesn't like it. We got Matthew Chalk saying, I was leading Alexander too, placing that bet. Thanks for the show, Weezy. You got it. We got Good Luck Hall, says, or y'all, says Anthony. We got Let's Go Pantoja, says Lexicon. And thank you, Weezy, says Teratea. And the Pantoja preference, proud. There we go. Let's go, you guys. All right, you guys, have a great night. Thank you all for hanging out. And we will see you guys here tomorrow, 10 o'clock Central Time, for Ask Weezy. Good night, everybody.